All right. So, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Mindgasms podcast. I'm going to talk to Shane Kennedy today, who uh, is one of my fellow Canadians, which is nice because I don't mind talking to Americans, of course, but I talk to Americans most of the time. I would say from mixed mental arts, and it's nice to talk to another Canadian as well. And yeah, so I guess. I first started talking to Shane a little bit when you were on that mixed mental arts chat with I think Dusty was there and our friend Ed was there too, also known as Sam's Bulldog. And then we kind of have been going back and forth a little bit with each other on Twitter about kind of philosophy and morality and postmodernism and stuff. So we're going to talk about philosophy like postmodernism and maybe pragmatism, and maybe get into some morality. And I'm like I was saying before we started, I'm interested in your take on Christianity too. So yeah, do you want to start off by saying a little bit about yourself there?
Yes, okay, so fair enough. So how do I reference this? Um, like we're all searching. Okay, we're all trying to grow. We're all trying to learn. And there's this modern idea of patriarchy, and a more, let's say, constructive version of patriarchy is this idea that we all have an inheritance. Now, we have a genetic inheritance, that's pretty obvious. We also have an idea inheritance, right? So
Mhm.
we're all trying to figure out what we are. So I think the best way to introduce myself is like, um, I have a very liberal disposition in the sense that I'm very open, very accepting. But as I learn more about reality, I'm becoming more conservative. So by way of introducing myself, it's like, well, what's the truth? Where are we going? And it's just kind of this negotiation between, well, what am I doing? Am I learning who I am now as Shane Kennedy, or am I actually learning what I am as a human who has a billion years of history behind me, and like what's really the truth? So, and I've been
That's the
struggling with
most philosophical response I've had so far.
that. Yeah, but anyways, the most simplistic way I could say it is like for most of human history, it's like you were given something to do and you did it. And we're one of the first generations where it's like we give you nothing and you got to make something of it.
Yeah,
And then I'm a person who's been like, well, actually, why don't you just give me what we already knew? Because like the reason we had that was evolutionarily successful. So like if I could have got my own inheritance, I would have appreciated that instead of
right.
having to spend a decade discovering it for myself. So that's my introduction. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I like that way of looking at it too. And especially like it seems like I'm sure one of the things we both seem to appreciate excuse me, about philosophy too is that kind of that mindset. The more you get into it and the more you get into any branch of philosophy, really, it's more of like a mindset of discovery and kind of like toning down your need to have definitive answers in a way too.
Well, yeah. Well, you know how Jews wear a kippah, or what's the other word for a kippah? The little hat they wear on their heads.
Oh, the yarmulke? Is that what
Yeah,
it's called? Yeah.
yarmulke. That's the Yiddish word, I think. So yeah. So why do the Jews wear that? They
I
wear
don't
that
know.
to remind them of the transcendent,
Oh,
which
okay.
which is you don't have the answer. Okay, like the
Right.
book of Job. It's like Job gets all these bad things happening to him. He gets angry. He says,
Yeah.
"Okay, I can decide this is bad." And God says, "No, no, you can't decide this is bad. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not able to be definitive." And or you can go evolutionary on it. It's like you don't know what niche you need to solve the problem for. You don't know what the next solution is. So to not be humble, it might work because maybe you have the solution, but reality is very chaotic and we
Yeah.
don't know what the solution is. So it's what we actually do is we never are right. We're more or less just lucky that we're actually acting out the correct action pattern, right?
That's a good way
And
of putting it.
yeah, So yeah, so that's the way I look at things.
That's a
So
good.
yeah, what's a topic you want to talk about? Let's dive into something.
Well, if you want to, I was thinking first. It seems like we could talk a little bit about postmodernism, because I know like there's some, I would say a lot of common misconceptions about it, and you seem to have a good handle on it for someone who, and I'm sure as fuck not saying I'm an expert on the subject. I've read like maybe a handful of books or so, and I've watched and listened to lots of podcasts about it, and I've talked to people who are more knowledgeable about it than me. But like for someone who, as you've said, you haven't investigated it that much, you seem to have a fairly good handle on it. But and I think it would be good to talk about what some of a lot of the common major approaches, I guess, are in that, and maybe relate that to morality, because I know we were talking about that before too. But I guess what I guess the best way to do this would be for you to just ask any questions you have, and I can see if I can maybe give you any answers.
Okay, we'll approach it that way. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to kind of set out the landscape before we
Sure,
talk.
sure.
Okay, and what I mean by landscape is, um, geez, it's very easy to talk past people.
Yes,
You know what I
yes,
mean?
especially on
Very,
social media.
especially on social media. So very easy to talk past people. So, but to the extent that you have some sort of common framework, you're more likely to actually be talking about the same thing,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it might seem pedantic, but uh, I think there's actually like this legitimate place to try to lay out the landscape we actually think we're both walking in before we talk about what we're seeing, right? Because,
Sure.
yeah, okay. So when it comes to talking about postmodernism, um, I think there's this pitfall you're going to get into. Well, the proverbial you, is going to get into, which is the pitfall of like, how do I say this properly? Okay, I say this properly. I can do this. Okay, so here's the problem with postmodernism. It's like, okay, is postmodernism a lens that you could look through reality at? What do you say to that?
Um. Well, I'd say it's kind of more, it seems to me like kind of more of a way of analyzing the way that historical and cultural concepts and ideas change, and the way that language changes, at least particularly if we're talking about people like Foucault and Derrida. It's even the case that I think I heard this recently with my friend Tim Keefe, who recently talked to me on my podcast, who's really knowledgeable about postmodernism, and he talked with my friend James Sullivan on his podcast too. I think in one of their episodes, he was saying that in an interview that you can see with Foucault from the 70s, someone asked him what postmodernism is, and he said, "What's postmodernism?" So it's not necessarily the case that there's like this particular way of thinking, like maybe there is in pragmatism, and it can be easy to see that that might be the case. But if there's, I guess, to give a more direct answer to your question, if there's anything that you can identify with postmodernism in terms of a worldview, it's to kind of look at culture and concepts and language, and just try to understand that these things change constantly throughout time.
Okay, so I'm going to do some active listening. So what I heard is, yes, it's a lens that it enables analysis, and I heard that it's very hard to define, and I also heard um, I heard a third thing that I'm too intoxicated to remember. But so the point is, okay, so fair enough. So I asked you, is postmodernism a lens? And I think you basically said yes. Hard to pin down. and this is actually the exact same conversation I had with one of my best friends in preparation for this conversation, because I basically gave the most belligerent versions of the arguments I made, and then I'm getting angry. And I'm like, oh yeah, just fucking tell me what to do. And but anyways, okay, so here's the thing. It's like I think there's two different paths you could analyze it through. One is like you could look at like the explicit reality, and this is a distinction I might keep coming back to, and it might make no sense, and I might be wrong. But in an explicit sense, explicitly, what postmodernism does is analyze things in this way. Explicitly, you can't define exactly what it is. Explicitly, it's just a way of interpreting narratives. And then if you explicitly ask Foucault, he doesn't have an explicit answer. But all along the whole time, there's an implicit realm. So in an implicit sense, it's like, are you using insert any philosophy? Now, I can say, I don't believe my hand is up. I don't believe I have 5 fingers. I do believe I have 5 fingers. I believe I have 5, I can say whatever I want explicitly.
Yeah.
Okay. The relationship between what I say and what's actually real doesn't necessarily have any relationship.
Yeah.
So if
that's actually something that postmodernist writers say a lot too.
They do.
Yeah.
This is see. So I think what's going to happen, hopefully, if I can not get too emotional, what I think is going to happen, because I'm an emotional guy. I'm a Christian, so I have convictions. Right. So the best case scenario is that as we talk about things, because there's so much truth in postmodernism. So the best case scenario is transcending that gap between the fun, because postmodernism is very slippery in the sense that it's the one idea set where it's like we have ideas, but there are no ideas. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like it's kind of more like, here are some ideas. Here are some different ways to look at these ideas, and here's how these ideas came about.
Yeah. A lot of things do that, though. Okay, so maybe it was too early to introduce that point, because I got to work towards it. So okay, so here are the 2 lines, though. So come back to what I was saying earlier. It's like, okay, if I put forward an idea, okay, if I put forward an idea, that is implicitly describing a way of viewing the world.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, so the moment postmodernism shows up and goes, okay, I'm going to put forward ideas. I'm going to just challenge things or investigate things or explore things. I'm just exploring. Let's use the word explore. I'm exploring. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, and then somebody comes to postmodernism and say, well, actually, what you're doing is representing a concrete way to decide how to act in the world. The postmodernist comes and goes, well, how is that possible? I'm just exploring. Explicitly, what I'm doing is I'm explicitly just exploring. But by definition, when you do anything, you're representing a value. And I don't know if this makes sense. Maybe I'm too much in my own head. But the moment you engage in an action, even a description, the moment you describe something, like if I describe, like I'm going to look at you right now. You have long hair and a yellow hat. I didn't say you don't have tentacles coming out of your head. You know what I mean? So I'm making a value judgment, but what's relevant, because postmodernism would say, well, let's deconstruct the situation. Why didn't I say you aren't a fish? Why didn't? Is it because I privilege?
Is there a value judgment attached to saying that I have long hair and a yellow hat, though, or is that just descriptive?
Okay, well, give me an example of a single thing that is descriptive that doesn't have a value judgment inside of it.
Well, does the example that we both just used have a value judgment?
I'm going to argue that every single thing has a value judgment in it. That's going to be my position.
So this is like that, like, basically, like, one of the things I said when we were talking about this, I think yesterday, was that this seems like, and I don't know if necessarily specifically postmodernists talk about this specific idea in this specific context, but it seems like one way of looking at concepts from postmodernism in terms of that would be that saying that everything is one way or everything is another way seems like kind of a black and white way of looking things from kind of the more of the Enlightenment or maybe modern era, that postmodernism is trying to just kind of flip on its head and analyze and say, like, why do we have to say that it's one way or the other? So from that perspective, I would say that I don't see how it could be the case that there could always be a value and judgment attached to something in all circumstances, given, as you often mention, all of the complex factors that make up human behavior.
Okay, so there's two directions we could go with that. It's like, because the problem, the reason why people speak past each other is because there's nested assumptions inside what you say, right? Like everything's a leading question, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how basic you want to go, because the more basic you go, the more you get removed from this specific thing you're talking about, right? Now, that being said, it's like at a fundamental level, do you believe there's an objective reality? Might be a question I should ask you. Is there
Like
actually?
this, I would say like, if it's like, this is like, this may be one thing that bothers people when they talk about postmodernism sometimes, because I would say that there's an extremely high likelihood that there is an objective reality, but I don't know objectively one way or the other because my experience is subjective.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, now, okay, so what you said is, you said it's likely but not provable that there's an objective reality, more or less what you said. That's where I would say the gap between rationality and faith is always in existence. One premise I believe is that you can't not be faithful because nothing's provable. Therefore, by definition, every time you act with any degree of certainty, you're by definition taking a leap of faith, because you can never prove anything. So it's inescapable. But the reason I brought that up is, if you're going to use a system, no. Oh, we're back. We're back.
Are you
Okay.
still there? I lost you. I lost about the last 10 seconds or so of what you said.
No worries. No worries. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is the moment you establish, if anyone concedes, and I think everyone actually acts as if this is true, whether they say they don't or do, if you concede there is something that's true, then there is actually a standard you're going to have to operate around. Now, can you know the standard? No, but it's still there. So the problem, the trouble with being too postmodernist is that if there actually is something that's true, then I lost my train of thought. What's the last thing you said?
Well, actually, I was thinking in relation to one of the things you were just saying there. It would be interesting to get into a little more of what you were saying about faith, and like what we were talking about yesterday, I think, in terms of this claim that we did come to an agreement that we just use different definitions in a sense, I guess. But you were talking about the label atheist and how no one is an atheist, and I was disagreeing with you because, to me, the definition that I used of an atheist is just someone who does not believe that any gods exist. But it seems like maybe that's something we agree, but we can maybe agree to disagree about it, because maybe you use a different definition of atheist and maybe a different definition of faith than I do.
Well, okay. If I'm a postmodernist, okay, and someone says, I don't believe in something, let's deconstruct this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you might try to define those words. So you might say, what does it mean that you believe? So if I say I believe, well, what color is this shirt? Is this
Mm.
blue? Some blue here?
Oh, that one? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I believe there's no blue here. Okay.
Okay.
Can I say it to you?
Yeah.
You tell me that you don't believe. For instance, like I'm saying, I don't believe this is blue.
Yeah.
Is it easy for you to say I'm wrong about that?
It is easy. Yeah.
Okay. Now, somebody makes a different claim. Somebody says, I don't believe that there is God.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, this belief claim is now in a separate class, which is basically your argument. Like there's certain belief claims that people make that are challengeable for different reasons. And you would say, well, why would you challenge that different belief class in a different way? It comes to the definition of words.
Well, like, sorry to interject. I just mean, like the way I phrase, the way I phrase atheism, for example, is very deliberate. Like I use the word, I say that for me, for example, I don't believe that any gods exist, but I wouldn't claim that I'm right or wrong, and I wouldn't claim that anyone knows one way or the other for sure whether God does exist, which is a large part of the reason for why I have no problem with people choosing to believe in God.
When you make that claim, okay, it nested in that assumption is that you know what the definition of belief in God are. The same way when I say I don't believe this is blue, I actually know what I'm talking about when I say belief in blue.
No, I'm
And
just saying those are the definitions that I use. If someone is using different definitions, then that's fine.
yeah, okay. So this is getting into like, okay. So the reason I put it that way is not to impinge upon you, because I genuinely believe you're a very smart and reflective person. So I'm not disparaging the way you're looking at the world. And furthermore, I believe, in a way I could expand upon, but I won't right now, that there's so much utility in the fact that people see the world different ways.
Oh, I
So
agree. I agree.
yeah, so when I say no one's an atheist, what I'm not saying is that, sorry, what I believe is when people say they are an atheist, that is a useful concept that serves a role that might be good for people. And it's true in the sense that saying that has positive ramifications on reality. So you can say you're an atheist, believe whatever you think that means, act it out, and good things happen. Okay. I'm not saying it's a dead end. I'm not saying you're bad for doing it. But what I'm saying is that, okay, so atheist means anti-belief in theism. Okay.
Yeah.
Theism is a belief in God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now we've talked upon the hardest word to define.
God?
What is God? Like there's not like good luck defining God. Now,
Would you say that it seems like it almost seems like theists each have their own individual definition of God, or at least people who actually think about that?
well, God by definition is transcendent, which defines explanation. Does that make
Okay.
any sense to you?
Yeah. That's something that used to like kind of trigger me when I used to be a militant atheist, but I kind of try to accept that more now.
That literally is what it is. Like the book of Job, right? Like Job gets fucked over by God a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
he complains about it.
That's one of my favorite books in the Bible.
It is Mission Impossible. But anyways, the whole point of wearing the kippah or the yarmulke is you don't understand it. You can't put it in a box. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
By definition, that's what God is. The thing you don't understand, but try to approach.
This sounds kind of like postmodernism, doesn't it?
It is very postmodernist, right? But see, this is the contradiction. This is the contradiction in being an atheist. This is why it's fundamentally, like, in my opinion, ridiculous. It's like you're trying to define the undefinable and saying you oppose it. I'm something.
I don't offer any like explicit definition of
How can
God,
you be
though. I
atheist?
mean, like,
How can you be not it? How can you not
I'm
believe
against.
something you define?
I just don't like the word God, because like every definition that I've heard people give me of it, I either don't believe in that either, or they use something like the Big Bang or the cosmos or the laws of physics or something like that, which
Okay.
I don't see the need to use the word God for that. But if other people want to, that's fine. I just don't agree with seeing it that way. That's what I
Okay.
mean.
Well, I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you a story that kind of like agrees with you. And ironically, it's about an evangelical person I met in Florida. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm in Florida, and I really love my Christ. I've been smoking and drinking in this podcast. Like, maybe I'm not the best Christian, and a lot of people might even call me a non-Christian. Whatever. Not whatever, but
Didn't you say when we talked on that mixed mental arts chat that you go to church?
yeah, I go to an Orthodox church. I have
Okay.
about a 95% success rate in attending for every Sunday. I've been in Ottawa for the last 3 months.
Okay.
So I really like my Jesus. But I really like my Jesus.
I like Jesus too, even though I'm not a Christian.
He's a solid guy. Solid guy. Solid theoretical guy. But the point is, it's like, okay, so so I'm at this church in Florida, and it's one of these like churches that's rented a space in a mall, and which apparently is a thing in America. And I'm like, well, okay, fair enough. So whatever. I sit down. They have their pop rock song. They begin and end their service with. Fair enough. You get your pop rock Jesus song. That's a thing. And and I'm like, okay, fair enough. You know, I mean, like, I'm here for communion and the Lord's Prayer, and you're not going to do either of them, but fair enough. And who am I to judge? And he says, okay, this isn't going to be a regular sermon. I'm going to tackle the questions from the audience, from the congregation. I mean, this is a series I'm doing, so forgive me, people who are here for the regular service, but we have these top 10 questions. I'm going to answer one of them today. It's number 3 or 4, and it's how old is the Earth?
Ah.
And he's like, I'm going to give you the scientific and the biblical explanation. And I'm like, dude, are you actually going to try to explain how evolution doesn't contradict Christianity, which I don't think it does at all. I firmly believe that, very, very firmly. I'm an evolutionist, perhaps more than a Christian. But I'm like, dude, that's ballsy. Like, you're in a mall. You're doing really well. Like, no, this church is very successful. I'm not belittling it. But I'm like, are you truly going to explain to, like, what I would assume are evangelical Christians or something like that? That could be ignorance, but I assume it's like that kind of audience, and people know what I mean. And I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to judge, but I assume that's who it is. I'm like, dude, are you really going to try to like justify some version of evolution to like Christians you attract in a mall successfully, professionally, legitimately? I'm not. Anyways, so it turns out what explained the science side was explaining all the problems with carbon dating. That's what it turned out to be. So the science side was being like, hey, carbon dating has flaws. And then the Bible doesn't. That's all it was. And I'm like, oh, what a letdown. What a
That's not
letdown.
steel manning at all.
No, the exact opposite. So, to segue for a second, once upon a time, I was coming back from a job site, and I heard this on the CBC, similar to BBC, like public broadcast radio. They were talking about the Bible wasn't written in the language we speak today. It was written in a different language. It was a symbolic language.
Right.
And
Was it written in was it Greek and Hebrew, was it?
No, that's an explicit definition of language.
Oh, okay.
It's an entire different ontology.
Oh, you're looking at it like metaphorically, you mean? Is that what you mean?
Metaphorically, it approaches closely to what that might mean, but it's like the idea of metaphor didn't exist 1,000 years ago. Okay, like the current definition of literal didn't exist. The current definition of fact didn't exist. People didn't
Okay.
talk that way. So anyway,
What
so he was
what
saying,
were they go like did they not think of things in that way, or did they think of things in a similar way but not use those words?
I will get to your question. I'm just going to finish my story first.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Sorry, I interrupted
No,
you.
no, no, no. You didn't interrupt me. You didn't interrupt me. You're getting ahead of me in a positive way. But
Okay.
anyways, so I come up to this preacher at the end of this conversation, and I say to him, like, look, um, hey man, like, the Bible was like written in a different language. So like, um, if I interpret it literally, that seems like what modern people do. Isn't that kind of like wrong? Because modern people didn't write the Bible. And he's like, well, no, like, yeah, sometimes it's metaphorical, but you should always try to take it literal. And I'm like, well, wait a second though. Nobody took anything literal when the Bible was written. So aren't you kind of conceding that like the modern way of looking at reality is correct by assuming you should look at things literally? Because that's what modern people do. No, nobody did that when the Bible was written. And he was basically like, huh? Nobody would have nobody what it was saying. So to answer your question, it's like, okay, if I were to say Satan possesses you, okay,
Hmm.
does a literal Satan come into your body and make you do things?
Yes. Is it the case, I might be totally wrong about this, but is it the case that John Milton's Paradise Lost had a large role in the current um like physical conception of Satan as like this red evil guy in hell or something like that?
I think you're probably right. Um, the thing is, I'm a very ignorant person when it comes to being like a proper Christian. But I think like the kind of specificity you're talking about, I do think it's modern. But what I would say in response to what you're talking about is I'm just going to go right back to Genesis. Okay. In Genesis, it says, what's the very, very first sin? Okay. Eating the fruit of knowledge, actually
Yeah.
understanding something. Okay.
Yeah, Jordan
So,
Peterson talks about that. That's interesting.
and I've seen every single thing Jordan Peterson's done in the last 2 years. Like the guy's a prophet. So that's going to be very obvious the more I talk. But like, if you actually take that idea seriously, it's like, well, what's the penalty of knowledge? Okay, the penalty of knowledge is believing you actually can understand things. Okay, the transcendence is no longer important. I can actually understand what I'm talking about. I can actually do what I think I'm doing and actually know that's true. Okay, you you're thinking you can eliminate faith. You think you can and the thing I find so contradictory about atheist or postmodernist, it's like on the one hand you're acknowledging that you don't know anything, but on the other hand you want to state something as if you can state things are. And when you try to walk that line, um, what's the example you used
For which?
just a second ago? You used an example.
About
Par- par-
Satan?
oh, we're saying, yeah. So the thing
Oh yeah,
is,
like the
yeah,
the red guy in hell.
yeah, okay. So it's like, well, what does that mean? If you're going to use modern literal language, you're going to think there's a red guy in hell telling you what to do. If you're using symbolic language, what that means is there's this path you can go down where you assume things you know that you can't know, and that's going to get you in trouble. And that place of trouble is going to be red in the sense that you're going to be killed or it's going to hurt, and hurt is red. So that's the way you would use that language. So when people say, um, you know, don't make hell, don't be possessed by the devil. Like nowadays we say you're schizophrenic. We say you're possessed by a devil. It's like
Yeah.
what it's they're not. again, nowadays we literally think that mean those words literally, but what they're describing is it's more phenomenological, if you want to use a more
Yeah.
scientific term, right? It's a more
Postmodernists actually talk about how those kinds of definitions change throughout history, exactly like you're just talking about.
Okay. So so I'm going to turn it back on you for a second here. It's like, so my problem with postmodernism is that I appreciate its insights. Okay, I appreciate the validity of using it as a lens to view in reality. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that. I respect that. My problem is that it's going to influence anything that influences the way you perceive reality changes how you act, and every act is moral. So when these ideas start getting into one's head, this is where it's like everything you say has assumptions nested in it. You know,
Okay.
if I say you can be neutral, like it presupposes that there is a thing called neutrality, that people have a choice between being positive and evil. It's like I'm saying much more than what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
yes,
Like we were talking about yesterday, I disagree that like everything is moral though. Like every action is moral. Like the examples I was using yesterday. I don't scratch my ass or smoke weed or jerk off because I think they're right or wrong. I do them because they're fun, whether I think they're right or wrong or not, or just because it's like an instinctive action or something like that.
Okay, you were mostly describing your perceptions of your actions. Okay?
Yeah.
Which don't mean anything. Like,
yeah.
Human
Well, in the
descriptions.
same way that no one's do, right?
Well, for instance, like I'll use a classic example. It's like I'm building a car. A car is sorry. I'm going to use oil to create energy to go from A to B. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what you explicitly say. Now, what does using oil do? It creates global warming. It changes the way societies structure their cities. Okay, so just because I say that what I'm doing with using oil is taking energy to go from A to B, whether that's a car or a factory or whatever it is. Okay. The fact that I say that's what I'm doing has very little relationship to the actual effect of what's happening.
You're talking about how there's consequences?
I'm talking about explicit versus implicit. This is going to
Okay.
be this is going to be my consistent theme, which is
Okay.
like explicitly, if you want to talk about postmodernism explicitly, you're probably right. Okay, but explicitly presupposes there's no transcendent, there's no God. It presupposes that
Well,
you're
some of them, like particularly Derrida, sometimes actually does talk about metaphysics, and like one of the things that that when you investigate different philosophies, regardless of what it is, the more you kind of discover that there's disagreement and there are different approaches. Like one of the things that I like about Foucault is that he often criticizes religious power structures. But one of the things that James Sullivan, I think he has said that he likes about Derrida, for example, is that he talks a little bit more about metaphysics. And in the way that he talks about how language and concepts change, he actually kind of offers more charitable interpretations of Christianity and religion. So it's not necessarily that there's no metaphysical or anything like that.
well, I mean, and that's why I'm very interested in talking to you, because there's definitely value there. And this is what I was talking to my friend about for the half an hour belligerently before we discussed. I was just trying to like hammer out the most belligerent points I could make and getting him to like, what am I missing? What am I missing? And the thing is, yes, there's great perceptive value there, but like everything you just said exists within a framework of what's valuable. Okay, so what you were saying is I can draw this conclusion, this perception. You were listing a series of things you could describe in some definition of accuracy within a node. Okay? But within that node of validity, okay, that still presupposes a node. Okay. And that presupposition of a node, that's what theology is about. Okay. Theology is because the problem I have with postmodernism is that people think, okay, I can just adopt this way of looking at the world and it's in its own box. I'm in this box of looking at the world this way, and I can just do that and it's just inside this box. But that's not how reality works. How reality works is it's like the way you perceive the world is a moral decision. That's the definition of morality. Because
morality is the way you perceive the world?
Of course.
I don't think that's necessarily, well, at least that's not the definition of morality that I use.
What's your definition of morality?
I would say like a way of, well, I guess it is similar to a way of looking at the world, but
give me an off the top of your head definition of morality.
Like an off the top of my head definition of morality would be specifically determining what is right and wrong.
Okay, so let's use that. Okay, determining what's right or wrong. Okay, that's a value judgment. Okay.
Yep.
If you employ philosophy, you're saying looking at this is right, looking at this is wrong.
I don't agree with that.
Okay, well, I'll give you an example. Okay, give me a postmodernist statement. Any postmodernist statement?
I don't know.
Any conclusion, any sentence you would say from a postmodernist perspective?
Okay, well, let's say the way that, well, one thing that Derrida talks about is, no, that's Foucault, is the way that mental illness is looked at has changed a lot since the 1600s and 1700s due to a variety of different factors. Like, for example, relating to an example that you gave, we see schizophrenics now as people with mental health problems rather than they were possessed by the devil.
If I say the exact opposite, is that okay?
If you said to me what?
The exact opposite of what you just said, is that okay?
It's okay. I would say that's a different way of looking at it.
You just made a claim.
Mm-hmm.
So if you made a claim, some sort of claim, and I make the exact opposite claim, are they of equal value?
Yeah.
So you're relativist then. So every claim
I would say so, yeah.
Okay. So
but that's another misconception often about postmodernists is that a lot of the times they don't often explicitly say that they're relativist, but they don't try to say like that means that evil is just as good as good or anything like that.
Okay, but you just I have 5 fingers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
Yeah, it looks that way.
Okay, I have 0 fingers. Do you agree?
It doesn't look that way.
Okay. So are both those claims equal?
Well, one of them. Sorry, there's some background noise. Yeah, I would say that it looks to me like you have 5 fingers and not that you have 0 fingers.
Okay, but this is the thing. We're both creatures acting in the world, right?
Yeah.
So this is the pragmatist claim, is that we're actually actors in the world. So
yes,
there's a difference between me saying there's 5 fingers and 0 fingers.
Yes.
There's a difference between you making your postmodernist statement you made and me saying the exact opposite. There's actually a difference there. So
is the difference more than language?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless you think all languages is language. Language to me is an evolutionary phenomenon that traces its invention back to the Big Bang. You know, for
Okay.
me, causality goes back to the Big Bang. So like, so like when I say there's 5 fingers here, the reason that I say that is because people who didn't say there are 5 fingers here don't exist, evolutionarily speaking. You know, sensory systems, understanding systems that would deny 5 fingers, those are people that don't exist.
Okay.
You know?
Well, like, don't get me wrong too, because I do appreciate many aspects of pragmatism. Like, you know, I've talked with my friend Hayden, and he's helped me learn more about that. And I do appreciate that perspective. And it can, like you were just saying, it can be very useful to view things that way. And there's nothing inherently wrong with viewing things that way. I think it's just like, that's one way of looking at the world. The more that maybe more postmodern or relativist perspective, if I can use those terms loosely, I think they're just different and different ways of looking.
Worse ways of looking at the world.
Well, I would say there are, depending on the context, because
that would
like,
be pragmatic. You just made a pragmatic claim.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can I say that pragmatic? Sorry, can I say that? So you disagree that there are better or worse statements about the world? So
I would say in principle, yeah, but depending on the context, there can be things that are much more pragmatic than not pragmatic, like you were saying.
Okay, so our ability to determine exactly how better or worse, that part is hard.
Yeah.
But knowing that there are better or worse, we're sure about that. Can we agree on that point?
See, I'm not sure about that either, because like the way that we see these things changes so much throughout history. It changes across cultures. It changes with each individual person depending on the context or throughout time.
Question then. Does reality reveal that certain things are better than other things?
I don't know, because that depends on our human interpretations of them, and it's very convincing that reality is the way that we experience it, but like one of the things we can discover from our scientific measurement tools is that reality is not exactly the way we experience it.
This is true. Okay. Okay. Do you believe that there's do you believe in the concept of species?
Well, what exactly do you mean by that?
Okay, so I look at reality and I see certain things survive and certain things don't. Okay. Now, you just basically made the point that you never actually know whether you're perceiving reality. That's where I would argue that's why everybody has to have faith. That's why I would argue there's no atheists. So we can go to that if you want. But that's the irony of your position, because the more you be postmodernist, the more you're actually agreeing there's no atheists, which is a funny.
Why is that?
Because if you're a postmodernist, you say, okay, everything depends on perception, everything depends on your lens, which by definition means anytime you ever try to say anything with certainty, it's a faith claim.
But I'm not saying with certainty that God does not exist. I'm just saying that it seems to me like it's very unlikely that any gods exist.
It's a faith claim.
How is it a faith claim that it seems to me that it's very unlikely that any gods exist?
Because there's no such thing as a non-faithful action.
Okay, but this is another thing that we disagree about. I think that there are many actions that are not faithful, like the examples that I gave earlier. Like,
thing is, it's like you can be postmodernist all you want. My hand's either gone up or it's not gone up.
Okay, but that's also a faith claim.
Everything's a faith claim. That's my argument.
Okay, I'm confused by you saying that like everything is a faith claim, but you're saying that postmodernism is this way, while also acknowledging that when you're saying those things, they are faith claims. So it seems to me like, ironically, also you're almost more of a postmodernist than me in a way, because that's like that's basically kind of a postmodernist position to have, that like everything is a faith
Well,
claim to an extent. So
the difference is that it's like if we both agree everything's a faith claim, okay? I believe faith claims are approaching objective reality, and I define objective reality as God. So when I make my faith claims, I think my faith claims are trying to approach the covenant with God.
okay,
I think that's the
this
whole
is
point.
this might be a good place to go back to, because we didn't get into it before. What your definition of God is?
Definition of God. Okay. Okay, so you're a human being, okay? You're trying to understand the world. You're a if you go postmodernism, you realize it's very hard to define what the world is. Okay, but you have to do something. Okay, you're a hunter gatherer. You have to try. You're either going to go hunt antelope or you're going to go climb a tree and get fruit. You're going to have to do something. You're going to have to actually definitively do something. So all the skepticism and ambiguity melts away to the extent that you're either going to go get food over there or go get food over here. And then evolution or reality is going to decide that your decision is going to work or it's not. Okay. There's some sort of selection mechanism. This is one of there's like three fundamental elements of evolution, one of which is a selection mechanism. So the selection mechanism's always going to operate. So as you're a creature trying to say, okay, this selection mechanism's operating on me, I need to try to negotiate with that selection mechanism. Okay. And as I try to negotiate with that selection mechanism, it's like I realize certain behaviors tend to move me towards success with the selection mechanism, and certain behaviors move me away from success. So I see certain tribes succeed, I see certain tribes fail. At a certain point, I realized, well, geez, what is this selection mechanism? Is it just a epiphenomenon? Is it just this random thing that like selects, or is the selection mechanism going towards a direction? Okay, Brett Weinstein would say, oh no, it's just random, it's just evolution, it's just an arbitrary selection mechanism. Other people take a little bit of psilocybin or acid, and they go, whoa, no, everything's connected. Okay, I have this feeling that I'm moving towards something.
I've had that feeling before.
Well, I'm glad you have. Okay, so what am I moving towards? Okay, maybe I'm moving towards God. Okay, maybe what God is this. Again, you can't define God by definition. By definition, you can provide partial definitions of God. So maybe what we're trying to do is maybe we're trying to move towards God. God's this thing we're trying to honor as we try to succeed. And then maybe if I get my friends around me to agree with me on the definition, or sorry, agree with me that we're seeking God, maybe we'll all align around the same thing. Maybe we'll be like John Haidt's people circling around something. Maybe that'll work better. And guess what? It does. Okay, people who try to circle around a common definition that unifies them work better, and they kept doing that. And then so the people were like, oh, geez, maybe God's giving us a message here. Maybe God's saying there's a way to circle around Him. Maybe there's a way to do that pattern. Maybe there are 10 commandments about it. Okay, great. There's 10 commandments. Maybe if we follow those 10 commandments while we try to survive the selection mechanism, maybe that's like cutting a deal with God. Maybe if we follow these 10 rules, we're more likely to not be selected against. Maybe we'll be closer to Him. And then, but that doesn't work. You know, it's like the rules, they're too arbitrary. They're too legalistic. It's like, well, so how do this is how Christianity gets invented. It's like, okay, so these rules don't quite work. It's like, we know we have to appease this selection mechanism of evolution. And then we've created these commandments to do that, but it's not working. We're not quite getting there. Maybe we need a transcendent way to do it. Maybe we need maybe somebody's going to come and teach us this guiding principle to negotiate our relationship with this selection principle. And then a guy shows up and goes, hey, I'm going to give you a lot of cryptic, metaphorical examples of how you negotiate with the selection principle. And I'm going to call that of the covenant, and then if you follow these very vague, undefinable selection criteria, you're going to have the best covenant relationship with the selection criteria that is God. And that's actually going to get you to heaven. And that's where you want to be. And people are going to say, well, you can't do that. And so without getting too Christian about it, it's like, that's how reality works. There are things that work and there are things that don't. So postmodernism has a lot of valid observations about the problems of deciding what's real, what's the correct interpretation. So I respect that completely. But ultimately, there is a correct interpretation. You will either be alive or you won't.
But isn't that a faith claim?
That's a descriptive claim. Species have gone
extinct. That sounds like a faith claim. And you were saying that everything is a faith claim. And and I don't think that like a lot of postmodernists would necessarily be in opposition to Christianity. And also, I mean, it sounds like you're making the I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're making the pragmatist. So is that your dog there? The pragmatist argument for the psychological benefits of religion, and are you talking about the evolutionary benefits of Christianity too?
Well, here's the thing, right? Okay, so it's like, okay, if I want to tell you, if I wanted to say the way you look at postmodernism is a bad idea, okay, that's a huge value judgment. I basically, okay, that's, to me, that's wrong, because I don't know what's going to work out. To me, that's also the same as believing in God, because God's the transcendent, which is not knowing what's actually right or wrong. But when you try to tell people there's a right way or a wrong way, you can't do that, because you're not God. You don't know what works or what's not going to work. Now, but that doesn't mean there aren't things that work and there are things that don't. So I don't know if it makes sense when I say it this way, but ultimately there's actually things that work and there's actually things that don't. So the fact that I can't figure out what the difference is doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Okay, this is why I don't take what people say very seriously. It's like, you don't know what you believe, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know if you're right or wrong. This is very postmodernist. You have no idea. Okay, but that doesn't mean there aren't things that are right or wrong. Just because I can't tell the difference doesn't mean they don't exist.
Well, it doesn't mean that they do, but it doesn't mean that they don't either. Like, it's impossible for anyone to know, isn't it?
Well, it is. So this is why everything's a faith claim. So I'm not going to tell you that you need to be a faithful person. I'm not going to say that to you. Okay. But I believe there's actually reality, because fundamentally I actually believe in what's happening. On faith, because I can't prove it, but I take it on faith that this is actually meaningful. There's actually something here.
I wouldn't necessarily say that I disagree with any of that. I'm just I'm only like 90 or 95% certain of all of that. I just leave room for skepticism. That's all.
Be careful. Be careful. What are you saying? Because if you make a single affirmative statement, that's a faith claim. So are you willing to make faith claims or not? Are you offensive or not?
I think everyone has to from time to time.
I would agree. Everyone does every single time they do anything.
I just think you get more extreme with that than I do.
Well, it's okay. It's properly.
One thing that I would certainly agree with you about in particular in relation to what we've been talking about is that all moral claims are faith claims, because they're claims about this is right, this is wrong. Sorry?
Every action is a moral claim.
I still disagree with that. Like how is like scratching my ass a moral claim?
Why didn't you scratch the wall? You just decided one thing was better than another. That's the
But
definition.
my ass was itchy. It's a reaction. Not like this is righteous to scratch my ass.
Morality? Morality is deciding what's right and what's wrong, what's better, what's worse, right?
But what about like impulsive, instinctive actions that we don't consciously think about?
Impulse towards A and not B, because A was more important than B. Like,
but our body subconsciously knows that something is right or wrong when we don't consciously think about it.
Okay, this is going to sound arrogant in a bad way, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about evolution. This is what a lot of people don't understand about evolution.
Okay.
No, but I'm dead serious. I'm dead serious. Okay, and I'm gonna say again, this is going to be very arrogant, and I'm going to say that one more time. It's very arrogant, but people think their thoughts are very modern. Okay, here's the thing: your body is the consequence of thoughts. What do I mean? Okay, the reason you scratch your ass is because the idea of scratching your ass is so necessary that it's no longer a thought, it's built into your body. Okay, so when people have thoughts, they think, oh, I can think arbitrarily to do something. That's all biology is concreted thought. Okay,
How is that the case?
because okay, so the whole point of thought is to decide what to do. That's why you have thought. You have thought to negotiate, to guide your behavior. Is that objectable, or we agree on that?
Well, I wouldn't say that's the only purpose of thought. Like there's other thought, like I don't know, like do I like vanilla ice cream or chocolate ice cream, or what should I eat for supper? Or
here's the thought. Okay, imagine you think I love people who kill me. Okay.
Okay.
Imagine that's your thought. Okay. That thought got eliminated biologically by the impulse to reject violence against yourself. That's why you have an instinct to defend yourself when you're being attacked. Okay. So as thoughts from an evolutionary perspective actually allow you to survive, the thoughts get internalized into your biology to the extent you can't stop doing it. Tribalism is a great example. The idea that you would cooperate with your in-group to oppose an out-group is so beneficial that it's no longer a thought you actually only manifest through explicit thought. It's built into your biology. That's what biology does. That's what your whole brain does. It's a filter. Your whole biology is a filter. It basically says, it's like, look, what do I need to think about? What do I need to do automatically? Do I need to think about breathing? No. I automatically breathe. Do I need to think about defending myself when somebody attacks my head? No. I put my hand up. So what happens over time through evolution is things that are so true, so in line with God or selection mechanism or evolution, whatever term you want, as it becomes more and more apparent by the selection mechanism that that's the way to go, it becomes more and more internalized. The whole role of thought is to interpret the new things that need to be incorporated into your biology. That's the point of thought. The point of thought is like, hey, there's this realm of things I don't understand. So I don't want to necessarily reject a woman who's ugly, because maybe I don't know what ugly is. But biology already decided a woman who actually has a penis isn't a woman, so I'm not attracted to her. So your thoughts can like let you deliberate whether she can be fat and I'll have sex with her, or she can be skinny, or whatever it is. But your biology's already decided if the thing I'm attracted to has a penis and I'm a man, no. If I'm more heterosexually propagatively oriented. But the point is these things, that's the whole point, that if you're a serious person about evolution, if you're serious about causality, it's like your thoughts, the only reason you developed the capacity for thought was to put more information into your biology. That's how evolution works.
Well, it sounds like it sounds like you're saying that and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're saying that thought is the cause of evolution, which doesn't make sense to me, because thought did not exist until
thoughts serve
brains existed. So evolution had to have started
well,
before
well,
thought.
do you believe in John Haidt's elephant and the rider?
Yes.
Okay. Thought serves the elephant. The whole point of thought is to help the elephant go in a better direction. Okay. The elephant is evolution. The elephant is biology. The evolution. So all thought does, thought's not in control. The elephant's in control. Biology's in control. Evolution's in control. God's in control. So you have these thoughts. You say, I'm an atheist. You say,
are you using God as a synonym for evolution?
God is the thing that selects. That's why we have a covenant with God. That's the primary Christian idea. A lot of Christians don't understand this, and I could be wrong. But what Christianity is making a covenant with God, making a covenant with reality. You're striking a deal with reality. You're saying reality, call it God or reality, whatever you want. You're saying reality, if I do this, I will be okay. That's what you're doing. You're basically saying, I'm the writer, okay? I have this idea of how the elephant might not die. And I'm going to worship this idea of how the elephant won't die. The elephant's in control. God's in control. Evolution's in control. Selection's in control. I'm not in control. I'm just the writer. I'm this little tiny writer at the end of the process, trying to understand all this chaos that's coming at me. Okay. How can I possibly manage this? Okay. I'm going to strike a deal with reality. Okay. And the elephant's in control. It's like not my thoughts are in control. And my thoughts influence the elephant subtly. Okay. But it's not the thoughts. It's not the rationality. It's not the verbalization that's in control. It's the elephant. It's the God. It's evolution. These are the real determinants of reality.
So if we agree then, and correct me if I'm wrong again, if we agree that the elephants are in control, which I think according to Jonathan Haidt's analogy are our emotions, then I would say that it's just the case that basically our my emotions are leading me to agree with everything you're saying except the parts about God and the covenant with God, just because it doesn't work for me personally, and all of my life experiences have led to my elephant having that emotional reaction to it, in the same way that all of your life experiences have led to you having an emotional reaction to having a slightly different perspective on that than I do. It seems like there's only a slight difference in perspective.
There's only a slight difference because we're both acting in almost the identical way.
Yeah.
So, for instance, like I say I'm a Christian, you wouldn't say that. Okay, I say I believe in God, you wouldn't say that. But we both believe in trying to treat people nicely. Like the differences are like minuscule compared to the comparisons. So what I'm trying to do is devalue these explicit statements we make. Okay, that's why the whole like I'm an atheist thing. That's why I disagree with it, because you're saying like the explicit thing I say is the most important. Well, what are you talking about? 99.99% of what I am isn't what I say.
Well, like in relation to that, I wouldn't say, like, one of the ways that I have changed a lot, especially from when I used to be a militant atheist, is that whether God exists or not doesn't really matter that much to me, because no one knows.
Okay. So here I'll throw something on you. There's two types of God. Okay. There's like phenomenological God and faith-based God. Phenomenological God is like a descriptive reality. Okay. Descriptively, everybody has an explicit or implicit thing they are moving towards. Every action is directional. Okay. So when an atheist says, I don't believe in God, by that definition of God, they do. Okay. At bare minimum, everybody's moving towards something. Okay.
But that's to me, that's based on your definition of God, which not everyone agrees with.
Okay. how can you do an action that isn't directional?
I'm saying, well, they're like, even if we say, for the sake of argument, that every action is directional, then it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the same, that every action being
Well, you might
directional
not
is a
believe in my
synonym
God.
for God.
You might not believe in my God, but you believe in a God. Because what God is the thing you're supposed to move towards.
But isn't that your faith claim for what God is?
No, that's a descriptive definition of what God is. Every
Okay, well,
single
this is funny because the this is just constantly reminding me of postmodernism. It's a way of describing things, and then you say, like, I'm summing up here, but it's a way of offering an explicit worldview. But then you're saying that your interpretation of the definition of what God is descriptive rather than it being your own worldview.
Oh, I'm saying it's both. I'm saying like I can offer the whole palette of definitions of God. I believe fully up to the most faith-based version of it, and I believe all the way down to the most secular definition of God. But more primarily, it's like I don't think you can be agnostic. I think this might be the issue. Okay, there's no such thing as being agnostic
Why is
because
that?
because every action is directional, and any direction implies towards something and away from something else.
Oh, so maybe, like, from a pragmatist perspective, people either act like they do believe in God or they act like they don't believe in God.
No, people act like they believe in something always by definition.
Okay.
You can't escape belief.
Okay. Well, it just seems like you have a broader definition of God than I do. Because, if I'm, I don't know, as a random example, well, yeah, I guess actually this is an accurate example. If I have the goal of just simply eventually being able to make a living from writing and doing creative stuff like this, like I enjoy, to me, that doesn't mean God. And to me, a lot of people's, like, directions that they're trying to move towards are very different from my definition of God, because we're using different definitions of God.
That's polytheism.
Yeah.
That's what. So if you take evolution seriously, what humans actually did was they rallied around different things.
Yeah.
As humans rallied around different things, different pursuits, different objectives. That's I listened to a Joe Rogan podcast recently, just because I had to take a break from more serious stuff. It was
I love Joe Rogan.
yeah, well, yeah, he's great, but he was talking about why did sapiens develop the capacity to walk? Okay, it was towards some goal, and the goal happened to be being able to carry something in your hand gave you an advantage for defense. So as you realize you could throw stones, okay, you develop we humans developed the capacity to want to carry something. As we wanted to carry something, we decided to walk more upright, and that reinforced the advantage of walking upright, ergo bipedalism. Okay, so evolution gave us a reason to walk upright. But as we're doing that, as we're developing a reason to do something, it's like, okay, so now evolution is guiding us. I call God a selection mechanism. It's one thing God is. So the selection mechanism is guiding us towards this goal. Now, as we create stories about how to see the world, which is what you just laid out, you laid out a story about how you perceive the world. It's like it's directed towards something.
Mm-hmm.
That's the original purpose of myth. That's the original. Hey, guys, stop making fun of me. That's the original purpose of myth. Okay, so like when people define God as like a guy with a beard in the sky, fair enough. But evolutionarily speaking, the reason people invented myths, stories, things to rally around, that thing that's judging us, that thing that we should approach, was for very practical purposes. That's why you got polytheism. It was like, okay, I want to do war. I have this idealized version of how to do war. I'm going to call it Mars. Okay, I have this idea of blah blah blah. Whatever it is, I have my ideal of blah. And then people kept colliding. Evolution kept happening. And then all of a sudden, some smart Jews, unfortunately, figured out that actually, above all those objectives, there's some transcendent objective that we all want to approach. And we can't.
Are you saying it's unfortunate that we moved from this polytheism to more of the one transcendent God?
No, I'm saying it's unfortunate that my ancestors were the ones who figured it out.
Oh, okay.
It's. I mean, I love me some Vikings. Like they were super badass. I mean,
yeah.
And it's like, because I'm not a racist, it's like I don't want any one genetic pool or ethnic pool to be better than somebody else. But it just so happens that one ethnic pool actually made the covenant with God, and that covenant with God is actually true and the best. And it just so happens that we can actually concretely identify one group of people who made that covenant, and those aren't my actually explicit ancestors. And
your ancestors are the Vikings?
Well, no, they're not even Vikings. They're just Europeans. I'm probably
badass though.
I'm probably mostly English, Irish, Polish, and German.
Book on Norse mythology. Norse mythology is pretty interesting.
Well, okay, but see, all these systems. This goes back to my point of there being no atheists, which is everybody tries to orient themselves towards a goal. That's what God was like for. It's like Odin, like Alexander the Great. Okay, this is a great example. This is why there's no atheists. Okay, Alexander the Great.
There are atheists though. They are what they think they are. Different definitions of what an atheist is. You have a much different definition than me.
But it's the problem is that what atheist means is I am not a believer in God. But what you're saying is I have this super modern definition of what that means, and what that means is going to invalidate the old definition. Okay, so the most true definition of God.
I wouldn't say it invalidates any definitions. It's just the definition I use for me personally.
So what you're actually saying then is, if you say you're an atheist, what you're actually saying is, I don't believe in this very modern conception of God that is super superficial and ignores all the evolutionary history of what that word God actually meant.
I don't believe in anyone's conception of God that I've heard so far.
Well, descriptively, how was the concept of God used? Let's ignore any faith claims. Let's just be scientists. Let's be descriptive.
Okay.
Gods were used as Jonathan Haidt, right? Gods were used as things you rallied around.
Yes.
Okay. Everybody rallies around something.
Yes.
So what does it mean to say you're an atheist? If the most basic thing that believing in God is, the most basic incontrovertible thing about God is something you rally around. Everybody rallies around things. So what does it mean to say I don't rally around things? Like what are you saying?
That's not what I'm saying though. Like that's where we differ. I'm not saying that I don't rally around anything.
Who should clarify?
Aren't there also people who have no ambition for rallying around anything?
Yeah, that's called extinction. That's called extinction.
Yeah.
That's not real. That's superficial. That's dust. Okay, because here's the thing. It's like, ask me how old I am.
How old are you?
5+ billion years old.
Okay.
You want to say that? I'm an unbroken chain of life of of unbroken chain of success going back billions of years.
Well, by that logic, you could say you're 14 billion years old.
Yes, yes. Or I could say I'm infinite, or I could say I'm a son of God.
Yeah.
Okay. And then all of a sudden, the symbolic language makes a lot more sense. Okay. So when someone comes to me and says, oh, um, oh, I don't believe in God, there's so many nested value judgments inside of that. You're ignoring the fact that what you are is not what you think you are. You're a 14 billion-year-old thing. You are a thing that's always rallied around purpose. You are a creature that's always used God as the highest purpose to rally around things. That's evolutionary why you succeeded. So it's, again, it's not that I'm saying you're an atheist is completely untrue. There's a truth there. There's a rejection of dogma, of current definitions of God, et cetera, et cetera. There's validity to calling yourself an atheist. But like in an evolutionary sense, what you're saying is the most absolutely superficial, irrelevant, inaccurate thing you could possibly say. Because you are actually a creature that has evolved to rally around a purpose because of billions of years of evolution. That's what you do.
Well,
That's
to me, like evolution is separate from like claims about God. And like if we're talking about the history of the universe, especially, then for the vast majority of the history of the universe, there have been no beliefs about God. So all of this was happening without anyone thinking about God, unless you believe that God created the universe, which I don't. And if someone wants to believe that, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but we just see it differently.
Purpose, okay. Purpose, okay. So this is actually now you're bringing it to an interesting place. Okay, it's like there's always purpose. There's always direction.
But that's a faith claim too.
Okay, but how is there not purpose? Give me an example. Like even when you talk
Because
about
you don't know you don't know that
implicitly though.
Purpose. You can't implicitly know anything because, like you were saying earlier, everything is a faith claim.
Okay, but like, are you okay? So what system do you operate in, Ron? Most likely or impossible to know? Because the most likely understanding of reality is that reality is always. This is a complexity theory. Have you heard complexity theory at all?
Yeah.
Okay, complexity theory, right? It's like there's always a selection mechanism. The system's always gravitated towards some sort of optimize, and the optimize always been order over entropy. Okay, so the entire history of reality is towards order over entropy. So like, but why call that false? And that's what I find so interesting. Is like, why do people look at an entire universe that's always moved towards order, away from chaos, and then call that not real?
Doesn't it kind of fluctuate between moving between order and entropy?
What do you mean? What's an example of that?
Well, like physicists talk about how we're in an entropic universe, for example, and things go to disorder. But if you look at like the broad events of how stars explode and then form planets eventually, and those planets explode, it's kind of like a cycle of going from order to entropy, isn't it? Isn't it kind of not just going from entropy to order?
No, no, I think it's the opposite. I think it's like, well, if you heard like the idea that the universe will eventually die from like all the energy will, dissipate. What's that called?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, what the universe shows is a whole series of phenomenon that keep going towards greater order, expending entropy and chaos. Because what you see is all the systems go from less delineated to more delineated, more types of atoms, filling out the what's that called, the table of all the atoms, hydrogen and
periodic table.
Yeah, periodic table increasing. What you actually see is the periodic table getting more advanced, chemistry changing into biology, biology changing into ideas. Like what you see is reality actually getting. This is why I believe in God. I believe in God from the most atheistic perspective I could possibly imagine, which is what you see descriptively is this huge trend towards creating order and casting out disorder. Like all the universe is, for who knows why, it went from like one thing to this differentiation, and it keeps wanting to differentiate. It's obsessed with like changing and forcing entropy out the outside and just maintaining structures and building structures upon structures upon structures. Why is it doing that? And then Brett Weinstein would say, for no reason. It's just arbitrary. It just happens that way. But I mean, I drop some acid and I'm like, nope. Absolutely not.
Yeah, but like for example, though, eventually the Earth will the Earth will be destroyed. It'll explode, or it'll die or something. Eventually our sun will explode, and then won't that just continue the cycle of both order and disorder, like things getting destroyed and then becoming something new? But like it's like I'm saying, it's not necessarily that it's something like a continuous stream of going toward order and becoming more order.
So far it is. So far it is.
It doesn't seem that way, like from a historical perspective.
What's an example of that?
Throughout history, there have been better times and worse times, and then people did better for a while, and there were civilizations, and these civilizations collapsed, and then new ones formed. But it's not necessarily that, like, for example, everything about our modern civilization has been better than it ever was before. And it's especially not the case that if our civilization collapses, that the future civilization will be better in every way too.
As a Christian, I'll give you an example. Okay. So I'm going to argue that it's an upward trend. That's what I'm going to argue. Okay, it makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So, let me think. This is going to be online. Okay. So I bumped. Like, I don't believe there are actually neo-Nazis out there, but I've met some. Okay?
What do you mean then?
I'm going to tell you. Okay. So there are these people who think that this idea of being white is a real thing. I don't think it is, but some people believe it's real, and that makes it more real than I want it to be. Okay.
That sounds like kind of a postmodern perspective in a way.
Well, there's a lot of validity to postmodernism. There's a lot of validity there. It's like you really got to get into the nitty-gritty, right? That's why a lot of things I'm going to say are wrong, and a lot of things you're going to say are right. You know, it's
and vice versa.
And vice versa. I'm an emotional person, so I'm obviously going to talk in the tone I talk. But so, anyways, so these people who believe like there's this white thing, like that you have to defend, like you have to maintain it. And wait, let me check. Okay, I'm white.
Yeah, me too.
That sounds like a good idea. That sounds like a good idea. But then you're like, well, wait a second though. This whole like white thing being the best, isn't that cause genocide? That's not, maybe we shouldn't do that. You probably need a better that probably isn't the right paradigm, right? And so the reason I bring this up, I'm going to do this right. How to do this properly. Okay, so you're trying to think about what you're trying to defend. So what was the impetus for what you said?
Neo-Nazis. And
before the neo-Nazis was?
We were talking. You were relating that to your theory of how throughout history things kind of progress to become more ordered.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like what are you moving towards? Okay. And it's like, it's not that you're moving towards that. Okay. it's like it's what's like Hunter Moss would say, it's actually the culture, it's actually the ideas that you're moving towards, right?
Yeah.
So it was going to be so much better 10 minutes ago, whatever. But the point is, the point is like, as you keep trying to struggle what to move towards, sorry, I'm going to just cheat again. What were we talking about before the white people?
Like how you were talking about your theory that things gradually progress throughout history to become more ordered and less towards entropy.
Okay, less towards entropy. Yes. Okay, so that should actually be enough. So this comes back to the idea of the covenant with God, and so it's like, well, what is that covenant? Okay, like the covenant is not that like white skin is the best thing ever. Like that's like so preposterous.
Does it even say that anywhere in the Bible? I don't think it does.
Of course not. Are you joking?
Wasn't there like neo-Nazis who try to use Christian justifications for some reason that makes no sense to me?
Oh my God. Like race as a concept is just like the dumbest idea.
I agree. I totally agree.
Like, oh my God, like I won't even let people call me white anymore. Like I literally get up in people's faces if they try to call me white. I'm like, no.
I was kind of like debating with someone the other day who was saying that sometimes it can be good to have pride about your race. And I was thinking, well, I think pride in principle can be a beneficial idea, but I can't see a way that having pride about your race can ever be a good idea, because it seems like a way of segregating people and dividing them into different categories based on skin colors, so we can divide people instead of seeing us all as one species, man.
Yeah, okay. This is where the covenant comes in, okay? Because the reason, and I'm trying to bring it back, although I forgot the thread I had, but I'm going to take your comment and relate it back to what maybe I was going to say anyways, which is the covenant is like we're children of God, okay? If you try to pervert that covenant into a definition of race, you're going to lose. This is what the Old Testament's about. It's about all the ways you can like fail, all the ways you can have a wrong interpretation of reality, and you're going to lose, okay? And this is why you can't manipulate reality. This is my contempt of postmodernism, is because there's actually a thing that matters.
But that's a faith claim.
Yes, it's a faith. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But everything's a faith thing. That's inescapable.
Why choose to have that faith claim?
Okay, but you have to choose a faith claim. So what faith claim are you going to choose? Everything's a faith claim.
Why don't you just why not just choose to do things in, well, like you can have plans for the future and think about the past and
Those
do
are all
anything in the present moment without it having to have anything to do at all whatsoever with whether there's objective reality or not. Like whether there's objective reality or not doesn't really matter in terms of our.
Now you're ignoring evolution.
Why?
That's not how evolution's worked. Evolution has been a people, like John Haidt says, revolving around faith claims. That's how we've evolved.
To me, one problem with like, and maybe I'm just overly sensitive about this, but talking about how people people do better if they're Christian or something, or like you should like accepting faith claims because religiously they were beneficial. Like in terms of what you were talking about earlier, in terms of the elephant, my elephant does not see the benefit for me of believing in something that I literally do not have the feeling of it actually existing, just because it might be beneficial to me, or evolutionarily it was beneficial.
So here's the way I would say this, okay? I think I'm just going to speak, I think, pretty directly to what you're saying. It's like, So I'll tell you briefly about how I came to believe to be a faith-based Christian. Now, what I'm arguing is all the elephants believe in God. Okay, that's what I'm arguing. That's why there's
that's
no
also a faith claim.
Well, sorry. What I'm saying is all the elephants are oriented towards an ideal. That's what they do. They just gravitate towards it. And like what you just said was like, you as a rider, you don't accept the pre-described directions that the elephants may head towards. So you want to control what direction the elephant goes towards. So when someone comes to you and says, so even if I tell you every elephant's going to be directed towards God, you would come back and say, okay, fair enough. Maybe you would say, fair enough. Every elephant's going to be directed towards some ideal. We don't know what the best ideal is. It's impossible. So every elephant is intrinsically, unavoidably approaching some sort of ideal. But I'm not going to accept your definition of what that ideal is, even if my elephant, which you may not concede, but my elephant might be unavoidably going towards some sort of ideal. I can't escape that, but I'm not going to accept that that ideal is going to be called God, or especially not the Christian God, because I'm going to exert my agency. It's a good idea. I did that as well. I was a militant atheist. I was a hardcore atheist for a long time. And I call myself a hardcore atheist.
Very far from that now.
I call myself a hardcore atheist because I knew you couldn't say there was no God, but I was a hardcore atheist because I said so anyways. I did that for a long time. Okay. So anyways, shit. What were you saying right before I got in this line of thinking?
Oh, I was saying that it like if it was evolutionarily beneficial for, like, the most concise way I can say this is that if it was evolutionarily beneficial for people to believe in God, I don't see that as a reason that I should believe in something that I don't have the inclination to believe in.
Okay. So here's the thing though. It's like I'll give you two reasons why it's evolutionarily beneficial to believe in God. Okay, first off, it's like God from a particularly secular point. Like, for instance, there's two definitions of God. God as an ontological or reality fact, like as it's a rallying point, right? So believing in a version of God which is just like descriptively true. It's descriptively true that everybody orients themselves towards a goal. The definition of a goal, the highest goal is God. Everybody believes in that definition of God. You can't escape that. That's my argument. You can't escape that your actions have a direction towards a goal, and then the highest goal has been described as God. That's descriptive God. That's the non-faith-based God. That's the reason why nobody can be atheist. Is that definition of God.
Even if we say that I accept that for the sake of argument, though, what I'm saying is that I don't see that as a reason for me specifically or anyone else who doesn't want to believe in God.
Okay, well, because when you say God, for you, I presume, God spills into the second definition of God, which is this faith-based claim that there's this God you can't prove that exists outside of that.
Well, I would say it's more that the specifically the language, the word God, I don't see the need for that word, especially with what you were saying with like your definition of God in terms of like something that people orient themselves towards. To me, we don't need to use the word God for that. And to me, also, I was just thinking about, which maybe this is a bit of a tangent, but I think something else that would be interesting to talk about is why specifically you identify with Christianity rather than any other religion, if that is the definition that you use. I don't know if that's the one you use or if you're just using it to explain your point.
Okay, so I believe there's an objective reality. Okay. Steven Pinker's wife, can't remember her name. She she had a debate um, with um, with Peterson, William Lloyd Craig, I think is his name, and then her Rosa Goldberg, maybe something like that. They had a
Oh,
debate.
I don't think I've seen that. You should send me the link if you can find it.
So they had a debate about it was something tangentially like quasi God or atheism, whatever. Anyways, and it might have been her, it could have been somebody else, but I think it was her, and she was pushed about like what would she not never want to concede because you're supposed to be open-minded about everything, and she said I would not want to concede there's an objective reality. The idea that there's like even though I can't to give postmodernism its due, I can't know that I perceive it, but she's like I would never want to give up. This is an atheist. Never want to give up that there actually is an objective reality. Like that's like something so bedrock. I don't want to give that up, right?
This is something that I actually disagree with most atheists about, because that's one thing that I used to really staunchly believe, especially when I was a militant atheist too. There is an objective reality. Not only that, there is an objectively right morality.
Okay, well, this is the way I look at it. It's like God is transcendent, so is our understanding of reality. We only approach it. That's what evolution does. Evolution says, okay, what's the best way to be a biological organism? You can't know it. It's impossible. So what do? You toss out as many possibilities as possible, and then some of them survive, some of them don't. And like, is there a perfect answer to what objective reality wants? No, there isn't. There's just this never-ending struggle to approach what reality demands. That's what evolution solves. It solves it. Well, it tries to solve the problem of how do you.
I'm still here. I just turned my camera off for a minute.
So, how do you approach this solution that you can never realize? That's called evolution. Okay, there's always so much chaos that you just keep trying to approach it. Okay, and then so people invented the concept of God to try to create a some sort of symbol that you could actually try to approach instead of calling it the evolutionary chaotic struggle against reality for viable selection mechanisms that work. You call it God. And then you try to worship the evolutionary selection mechanism that will work given the constraints of contextual reality is God. And then you try to cut a deal with that. And so
you're really just an evolutionary biologist because your God is evolution. I'm just kind of
but it goes beyond that. It goes beyond that because I think that what's his name? I can't remember his name. Anyways, it's like so when you see phenomenon reflect what would be an implicit reality, the postmodernists would say it's like, okay, so you act as if there's meaning, but is meaning actually existence? Oh, you can't prove meaning exists. Does it exist or not? So the postmodernist perspective is very great at question. So this comes back to what we fundamentally talked about at the beginning. So the postmodernist perspective would be like, okay, so I act as if there's meaning. Okay, I have this descriptive reality that pretends there's meaning, and then I act like there's meaning, and then I make a faith claim there's meaning. So everything is pointing towards meaning. And the postmodernists would say, well, maybe there's meaning, maybe there's not. But Occam's razor. It's like if everything points towards this idea there's some sort of fundamental meaning, it's like, why would you choose there isn't versus there is? And that's still a faith claim. And I agree with that.
Well, it's that you don't necessarily have to choose one or the other.
Yes, you do. Every action is a choice.
You can act as if that one option is more likely than the other, but you don't have to assume that one is right and the other is wrong.
Okay. Yes.
It doesn't have to affect the way
you're right. You're right. But people who have acted like faith is important have out survived people who haven't. So this is where my pragmatism and my Christianity collide. Okay, and this is like a very, if this makes any sense to anybody who's listening to this, including you, this is very interesting, because the thing is that evolution has shown human beings who actually have faith in God outcompete ones who don't. So they persist and the other ones don't. The same way evolution has shown that the drive towards order has persisted versus the drive towards entropy. There's a large subset of reality that has gone towards non-entropy and persisted, and there's been a large amount of it that hasn't. Okay, but the entities that have gone against entropy have all been, especially the ones that are sentient, have all had a common belief in a purpose beyond themselves, and to this day they continue to perpetuate themselves more. And then a certain subset of those called that reality a covenant with God. They were Jews, one of the many people who did this. And then a subset of those Jews said that that covenant had a transcendent in reality. Oh, that's what I wanted to say earlier. Okay, so one amazing thing that Christ did was he decided to fight against problems you encounter. And I'm sorry, this is a horrible segue, but like, this is why I brought up white nationalists, okay, earlier. And I'm sorry if this is inappropriate, but
nothing's inappropriate here.
Sorry, but so the reason I brought up white nationalists is because I've met some recently, even though I think there are very few of them, and they were saying like, okay, we got to use violence to like keep the white race alive. We got to like defend this white race thing, like that's really important. And to me, that's like repugnant, and I'm like, I'm scared of it. I'm like, God, yeah. That's an idea. That's an idea virus. Like, if I were ever to be infected by the idea I have to defend the color of my skin, that's like so fucking dangerous. Well, see World War II for evidence, right? So yeah, it's like, it's so horrible. But what I realized is that, so what Jesus won this battle by he literally won by being tortured and killed. This is part of the reason. This is part of the reason why Jews don't consider him a Messiah. Is like, how can a Messiah win by being destroyed physically and persecuted? Okay, but if you're an actual Christian, you believe there's a solution that involves you literally letting yourself be killed, and you can still win. Okay, so the white nationalists are like, well, I gotta keep the migrants out of Europe, and maybe you do. I don't know the actual solution, but Christians believe that like there's this non-violent solution that can transcend things. Somehow, by loving everyone, by forgiving everyone, you can somehow win. And people say, well, you can't be a Messiah if you do that. And but apparently, the person who believed you could love everyone was so powerful that when you killed him, not only would he come back to life, but his ideas would literally take over the entire culture that killed him, which it did.
Loving everyone and forgiving everyone is a Christian idea that I agree with.
Well, of course you do, because as much as you might try to pretend you're not Christian, you're Christian as fuck.
I'm not Christian.
Yes. Well, okay. I have you're Canadian, right?
Yeah.
I haven't. Keith, should I call you Native or Indian? Which one are you? Okay, so he debates whether I should call him Indian or Native, but okay, he wants to be called Sir. He says. So for a long time, I was saying you're Christian. He didn't like that. Okay, he would literally fight me, and I kept calling him Christian to the point where he's like, I'm gonna
keep calling you an atheist then too.
Yeah, he didn't like that because I was saying you're acting out the Christian idea set. You're possessed by ideas. You're acting out Christianity. You can say you're not, but that's what you're doing. It's because the thing is like, okay, saying you're not Christian is like saying you're not human. It's like most of what you do is inherited. So maybe
are all humans Christian, even people who follow different religions?
Okay. Here's the thing. It's like, okay, take John Haidt seriously, right? The elephant makes most of the decisions, right?
Yeah.
So what defines the elephant? Okay, most of it's your inheritance. Okay, you are inheriting a construct, an idea set. Most of what you do, and then even once you're alive.
Does your conception of inheritance there include like your current culture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Most of what you do is inheritance of ideas, inheritance of biology, conforming to the idea sets around you. Because like Haidt says, right? Most people, they don't say things because they think they're true. They say things to conform to groups. That's why right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So almost every single thing that you do is your biology, your cultural inheritance, your response to your group situation. This little tiny sliver that's actually you using your own mind is like so tiny. Everything
I would say it's debatable whether that even exists.
Well, that's my point. Okay, so it's like, so you can't say you're not Christian.
I'm not Christian. I'm not Christian.
Me neither.
Yeah, fuck Christian. Bullshit, eh? Yeah, I'm the Indian / native. I prefer to be called sir.
Nice to meet you.
My name is Keith. What's your name?
Andrew.
Andrew, nice to meet you too. Where are you from?
You. Alberta.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of crazy Indians out there, eh?
Yep.
Yeah, watch out.
Don't call them Indians though.
No, I don't do that.
It's bullshit though.
But the thing is, like, if you take evolution seriously, it's like let's be serious about it. If you actually take Jonathan Haidt seriously and you take evolution seriously, because apparently Christians don't, it's like the vast majority you're doing is your inheritance. Okay, so when people say I'm not a Christian, you don't get to define what you are.
But why do you get to?
I'm acknowledging what I am.
But you don't know what you are, because like you said, everything is a faith claim.
I'm looking backwards.
Okay.
I'm looking backwards at what I am. Okay. What I am is a group of humans who identified as Christian for 2,000 years. That's why I have 2,000 years on my side.
Mm-hmm.
Given that what I actually say has like the most minimal value. Okay. So I'm going to use evidence. I'm going to use 2,000 years of evidence. And I'm going to also claim that Christianity is an evolution of 10 to 20,000 more years of thought. It's not Christianity.
But a lot of evolutionary biologists would disagree that this is like an evolution of Christian values or something like that, especially since Christianity is extremely new within the history of humans, right?
Evolution is a theory.
It's not though, because the Jewish faith is a combination of polytheistic religions. Okay, in the Old Testament, there's 3 to 5. I can't remember the exact number. So I'm a bad Christian. There's 3 to 5 different words for God that actually are gods from different cultures.
Yeah, and there's no such thing as a new religion, right? With original ideas.
Exactly. That's my point. Okay, so where this came from?
The flying spaghetti monster. Scientology.
Keith, it was cute when you came and said you were an idiot. An idiot, right? You're both.
Well, I wish it was an idiot. You're gonna have to be like.
Anyway,
I believe in the god of drugs and sex.
Rock and roll? Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. What kind of drugs you do?
Dude, this is gonna be on YouTube. This is like,
I don't give a fuck.
I know you don't, but like I'm not going to indulge on YouTube that I've ever done any drugs. That's not going to happen.
Hey, marijuana is legal now.
We're talking about drugs here.
Anyways,
you're putting us on YouTube. You can edit this out. What kind of drugs you do, if I could say?
No, it's not gonna. This is live. Anyways, the point is though, it's like, again, if you take evolution seriously, it's like these ideas didn't come from nowhere. They're like they are literally the evolution, because evolution applies to ideas as much as your genes. This is why Sam Harris is a complete fucking idiot. Oh my god, I can't. I could if I was a writer, I could put 10, 20,000 words about how dumb and ignorant Sam Harris is. The guy is just the exact example of like a machine that processes very well but produces nothing. It's like, if you want to be the best example of like computational power with no output, it's like garbage in, garbage out.
Tell me what you really think.
But anyways, it's like, but see, the thing is, like, people often insult Christianity by saying, "Oh, it's a derivative of X, derivative of this." No, that's why it's valid.
Or like the way that people like Sam Harris interpret it is as a fundamentalist Christian taking the Bible literally, like that priest you were talking about earlier.
Yes. Well, this is the quagmire I'm in as a modern person. It's like people no longer, like, even Christians don't, like, I'm a bad Christian, but Christians don't even understand what they're talking about. Like they're all materialists. Like most Christians I meet are materialists, which isn't a Christian. And it's like you don't even understand what you're talking about. Like, you've already conceded the whole argument.
Would you say that your experience kind of, I'm getting a bit of an echo there on, oh, now it's gone. Would you say that your experience kind of meshes with my experience of having been in church and talked with religious people, or at least now like knowing people who are religious, in that it seems like most people don't actually like philosophically or intellectually examine what Christianity or what religion is. They kind of just follow whatever religion they happen to be a part of without really thinking about it that much?
Yes, I would agree. I have a fundamental idea that, like, human beings follow leaders, and the thing is that it's not up to the average person to understand what they're talking about, because, again, I don't put much stock in the implicit things people say. I consider that garbage. That was what I was trying to build towards with the whole elephant evolution argument.
You mean the explicit things people say?
It's garbage.
Yeah.
It's complete garbage. It's all elephant. It's all elephant. The elephant's all evolution. Okay? So it's like, you can say whatever the hell you want. That's not the elephant. You can say, I'm a Christian. Your elephant defines what you are, not what you say to me. Say whatever you want. It's all garbage. And that's the vast majority, like, especially with leftists. Like, what you say, you're not saying, what you're saying isn't what you're saying. Like, you say you're saying, I'm anti-racist.
Leftism is a new version of Christianity in a way.
It is a very much. I call them all leftists.
Yeah.
Okay. Most people nowadays, and now on the right or left, but more on the left, but maybe I'm biased. I don't know. Most people, when they talk, what they're saying is, I am saying A. What they're actually saying is, A is completely irrelevant. What I'm actually saying is, I'm for something, and I want other people to believe I'm for that too. The actual thing I've said has no merit. That's why there's fake news nowadays, is because most people nowadays, what they're actually saying is irrelevant. It's all directional.
Like an example of this is like how I saw that Jim Carrey was placing direct blame on Trump for those mail bombs, and people were saying, and he was saying that if you don't think that his hate speech, I'm paraphrasing, but he was basically making the argument that if you don't think that Trump's hate speech is directly responsible for these bombs, then you are participating in his hate speech. And this is a common humanity narrative. And I was talking about how, you know, in the newest bit, in Jonathan Haidt's newest book with Greg Lukianoff, this is not a common humanity narrative. This is a uniting people against the common humanity narrative. If you want to have a common humanity narrative, it would be more like trying to understand why people would choose to be conservative, so that you don't have to fight conservatives as well as Trump if your goal is to remove Trump.
Yeah, well, okay, that's the thing. It's like the vast majority of what people say is irrelevant, even for me, for you, for anyone. And like, this is why I get emotional and it might be belligerent at times. It's like the content of what you say, you're lucky if it has any relevance at all, because because your content is not an end in and of itself. It's a means towards an end, right? Like you're not saying it because this is why Jordan Peterson's a prophet, because Jordan Peterson actually says the thing he says is the point of what he's saying.
I should get you on here to talk with my friend Isaiah, who I don't know if you've seen on here, who has a really huge problem with Jordan Peterson. It would be interesting to see you guys debate about that.
I would love it. I would love it. Anyways, you're an amazing person, but
you too.
Anyways, well, thank you for saying. That's my ex-girlfriend. But anyways, the content is just completely irrelevant, because it's all just about virtue signaling, which comes back to my point about directional action, which comes back to my point about God, which is that everything's directed towards an end, which is why, you know, everything's a religion, and there's no action that's not moral, whether you call it postmodernist way of perceiving reality, or you call it Christian way of perceiving reality, or objective, or whatever the hell, whatever bullshit moniker, explicit moniker you want to put. Like, it's the thing. It's like these words that we put on things. They're all they're trying to do is describe truth. They're trying to describe the actual reality. The reality is implicit.
So wouldn't you say, given that, then, that the word God doesn't really matter?
God's the most real thing in the world.
But if it's not about what you're actually saying, and if it's mostly about what you're saying implicitly, then why does whether God exists or not, and why does using the word God even matter?
You're a dude. You're a hunter-gatherer. Okay, you're stuck in the forest. It's 20,000 years ago. Okay, you're stuck in this forest. Okay, you got enough food to live for the night. Okay, you found some mushrooms because they were all over the ground. You've ate them. Okay, you're a little bit high, so you're sitting around the campfire. The only reason you're still awake. Okay, and you're sitting there and you're thinking, you still there?
Oh, you still there?
No, I'm still there. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I lost you for a few seconds there.
No worries.
Okay.
Okay. So 20,000 years ago, you're sitting around a fire at after light, the sun's gone down, and you're thinking, okay, Jesus, well, you wouldn't say Jesus, but you're sitting around a fire and you're like, this sucks. Okay. Like what are we going to do tomorrow? It's like, we only just made enough food to survive today. How are we going to get forward? And then some guy says, well, you know what? Maybe there's like an actual path that will allow us to go forward better. And then somebody says, no, that doesn't make any sense. But we're like, well, like, look, it's like when we try to hunt by like walking in circles, we hunt less. And when we hunt walking around, going further, we get better. It was okay, that makes sense. And then when we try to hunt where we murder our enemies, or where we envy people, we waste time competing against each other, 8th or 9th commandment, we don't get as much as if we don't. Okay, so over time, as you're sitting around that campfire, this is actually respecting our ancestors. This is one of the things that bothers me the most among people. Like, respect your ancestors. They created these rules through like so much death. Okay, at a certain point, they're like, "Hey, man, it's like, you know what? Don't kill each other. Like, this is true. This isn't postmodern relative abstract. This is literally a thing that's actually true. Do not kill other people. It's not my opinion. It's not my perception of reality. It's not coached in some abstract reality. Like, do not do that. No.
That is evolutionarily beneficial, but again, that, like, I'm sure as fuck not saying that it's a good idea to murder people, but it is a faith claim to say that it's wrong to murder people.
Okay, but so this zeroes in on the key thing I want to talk about. What is a faith claim? Okay, if you say it's a faith claim not to murder people, so how many millions of years does that have to work evolutionarily for you to say there's some actual real truth to it? Okay, if you will ever concede there's a version of real truth.
I don't think I would, especially since, like, there's a lot of behaviors that you could argue are due to evolution that are not beneficial for humans.
That's a contradictory statement.
No, it's not. Like when Richard Dawkins, for example, he talks about ideas like the selfish gene, which Jonathan Haidt talks about how evolution can be seen differently from that. But if you go with that kind of narrative, and if you go with one of the reasons that eugenics started in the first place was because they had this idea about how evolution tells us that one race is superior to the other, and even Darwin talked about that a little bit to an extent.
So I the thing is like, I was very interested in, when I talked to you, I was very interested. I was excited by the fact that we were going to be civil, but I was going to try to find what we fundamentally disagree about, and whether it's my communication gap and my ignorance that causes the disagreement,
or mine,
or there's something else. But the thing is, what I'm talking to you now for the time I have is like, you're fundamentally, I believe, a relativist.
Okay,
you don't actually believe anything's better than another, and I find that to be honest, ridiculous, because your actions show.
But it's my faith claim versus your faith claim.
No, it's not.
One of us is more right or wrong than the other. Like you said, we can't know that.
My faith claim is that everybody makes faith claims.
Okay,
but my faith claim.
But why do you find my faith claim to be repugnant in comparison to your faith claim?
Because you're arguing there are no faith claims.
No, I'm not.
Okay, a faith claim is a decision that one thing's better than another. That one thing is that there's actually truth. A faith claim is believing that there's false and non-false.
Yeah.
Okay? So you live in it's not wrong. Like, for instance, I was just to throw you a bone for a second. It's like, look, evolutionarily speaking, there's a great niche for human beings who are always skeptical. So you don't have to change the way you're thinking. I'm not saying that. I don't want to invalidate the way you think. There's a great place for people who are skeptical.
Not trying to convert me to Christianity either.
I haven't figured out how to do that yet. If I knew how to convert, when I figure it out, I'm coming back at you, brother. Like, I'm biblically obligated to do so. Okay, so like, if I knew how to convert people to Christianity, that would be all I would do. That's what God tells me. And the thing is, there's probably no Christian who believes Christianity the way I do. So it's like, it's a very unique thing. I'm pretty certain it's the truth. But I love my Jesus. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that I fully respect that, because I'm an evolutionarist, that there's a lot of niches, so you're allowed to approach things the way you want. But the thing is that what you're wrong about is that even if you say you're a relativist, by definition, saying you're relativist means you're not. It's impossible.
But this is your faith claim, because we were agreeing earlier about how moral claims.
Words mean. It's a word mean. Okay. Imagine the phrase, I assert I'm relativist. So now you're saying there's a non-relativist thing that you aren't, and you're putting being a relativist above that. By definition, saying that means you're not a relativist.
No, it's more of a position of uncertainty. It's that I'm saying that I don't know one way or the other.
That's not a thing. You cannot. No, I will not relax. You can't live a life of uncertainty.
Yes, you can.
No, you can't. Every action is an expression of certainty, because you're not doing something and you are doing something.
But that's still your faith claim, though.
Okay, as an identity, this is the best I can give you. Okay, you can identify your identity can be as a relativist or as an uncertaintist.
I don't know. What if I don't want to identify myself as a relativist or a postmodernist or anything really?
Okay, rider and elephant. Okay, the rider can say whatever it wants about the elephant, but descriptively, there are claims you can make that are valid about the elephant. So you can call yourself a relativist or an atheist, whatever term you want. The rider can say whatever the rider wants about the elephant. Okay, but the elephant descriptively is certain things, and it's not descriptively. Okay, descriptively, the elephant is a human. That's unobjectable. Okay, and then from there you can keep working forward and say the elephant is actually still human. The elephant is still a liberalist in the fact that it's not totalitarian in its orientation. And you can keep describing the elephant forward. And the rider, which is you, can keep saying, oh, I'm a relativist. I don't want to define. I'm a postmodernist. I respect postmodernists. But the rider can keep chattering and saying whatever it wants. But if you actually look at the elephant, if you actually look at the actions of the human being that we're talking about, there's no such thing as this relativist agnostic person.
Okay, but this is a huge problem that I have with that. If you're saying that, it sounds to me like you're saying that you can objectively analyze someone's behavior and you can judge what the person is actually like and what they're orientating themselves towards, regardless of what they say. And that depends on our subjective human experiences for analyzing and deciding what that person's behavior suggests about what they're orienting themselves towards. And that's not something that people can do as humans, because our experiences and our judgments are subjective.
It's not 1 or 0.
Sorry?
So it's not 1 or 0. Take what you just said. So you just said, everything you just said, apply it to a person. Okay? You can do that to somewhere between 40 and 80 degree of confidence. Everything you just said, you can do exactly that, judging their behavior, somewhere between 40 and 80 or 90% of confidence. You can do exactly what they are.
So even you have a little bit of relativism then?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so how is there a problem with relativism then? If even you agree with it in this sense.
Because the thing is, it's because there's actually because I believe in God, I actually believe in an objective reality. So there's actually a selective mechanism. So it's like at the end of the day, it's not like anything will work. Some things will work, some things will fail. Okay, so I don't know what I am. I'm claiming you don't know what you are. I'm claiming everybody's an elephant. More or less, everyone's an elephant. But what I'm saying is,
we agree about all of that.
That's why I phrase it that way.
Okay.
But the elephant is trying to move towards what works. There's actually something that works. The elephant's not just wandering around. The elephant's moving towards something that works. That's called God. That's how we've used that word. That's like you can say, oh well, oh that's not what God means. I'm gonna reference the last 200 years, 300 years. That's what I'm gonna use a 300-year-old definition of God. Now, every human being for tens of thousands of years have used the God the other way, and that's the definition for tens of thousands of years. But guess what? You know, I woke up one day and masturbated to porn and decided that the definition of God is what I say it is, because like I'm going to ignore millions of years of evolution and then decide you're an asshole for contradicting my super last minute definition of what this word means. And I'm going to
you have a super last minute definition of what that word means. You're saying that God is the evolutionary mechanisms that cause us to orient towards something, and that's like
Alexander the Great. Go talk. You take your definition of God and go talk to Alexander. Go talk to Caesar.
But you're saying that I have this modernist definition of God too.
I'm dead serious. Take any historical figure you want before 1700 and go talk about your definition of God. It makes no sense to them.
I could bring your definition of God and it would make no sense to them.
Well, it's what I say to Alexander. I would say, hey, what do you want to do, Alexander? He would say, be like the gods. And I would say, that's what I want to do too. Done. I believe in God.
If you're using your definition of God, for example, you were saying I'm paraphrasing, but you were saying that if our elephants gravitate towards a particular goal or a highest good because there's an evolutionary selection mechanism, that's God. That's just that label that you put on it. And we were talking about Jonathan Haidt too. And the way I think Jonathan Haidt would describe that is naive realism. Like, this is my experience of reality, therefore this is how reality works.
Yeah. Okay. See, the problem is that I was doing that because I'm talking to an atheist, so I need to speak in an atheist language. This comes back to the whole definition of God thing. So when I tell you about God, I'm going to speak a language I think you might understand. I'm not going to talk about the actual version of God I believe in. I'm going to talk about the version of God that the language allows you to understand.
Well, we can talk about that version if you want to. We don't have to endlessly debate about this. We're going to agree about it anyway.
Real God? Okay. God is a transcendent concept. You can't put into words. So I'll do my best to talk about the non-atheistic version of God.
Okay.
Because I believe every atheist actually believes in the non-atheist version of God, which is what I've been talking about, right?
That sounds like Sam Harris saying that everyone is an atheist or something like that.
Yeah, well, Sam Harris is like a super idiot.
But how is doing the opposite a better idea?
Okay. All of our ancestors, okay, for instance, I'm not. I was born in year 1985. Okay. Well, sorry. In 1985, I popped out of a vagina. Okay. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Okay. But the sperm and the egg that created me were before that, and then blah, blah, blah. So I'm nominally 33 years old, but that's not my actual age. I consider that a very stupid way to look at time. But anyways, so come back to the God thing. Okay, so I'm going to try to talk as a non-atheist, but I'm trying this on. I was I said earlier, I'm hardcore. So
yeah. I'm just interested in learning about what your perspective is. We don't have to debate about this.
Well, no, dude, it's not a debate.
Yeah.
I love you. I love you, brother.
Me too. Good. I'm glad we're on the same page.
I love you. I'm glad you tolerate that I'm an asshole or it's like it's all good to me. And like the most glorious thing I want from this conversation is to be better at just talking about things. And then great. So we're on the same page. But okay. So I'll tell you a little bit about this. To me, this is like my own experience, a microcosm for why God works. Okay, so I was an atheist, and then somebody said to me, sorry, I tried a girlfriend I had. I'm like, she had a picture of like a God quote next to her bed, and I tried her, and I'm like, you don't believe in God, do you? And she said, yes, of course I do. What do you mean you don't believe in God? And then she said with such confidence and conviction, something clicked in my brain, and I'm like, oh my God, obviously God's real. Like every single human being ever believed in God, going back hundreds of thousands of years, and these modern fucks said it doesn't exist. I'm dead serious. I'm dead serious. I'm like, whatever that term meant, that term, like forget that God being supernatural. Just think of it as a term. Forget the supernatural. I'm dead serious. Forget the supernatural as a term. As a term. Everybody believed it was a functional term to believe in. Okay? So for hundreds of thousands of years, it was a functional term that you would use to describe reality. As a functional term. Again, forget the supernatural. Then all of a sudden people wake up and go, it's no longer a functional term. This as a linguistic tool, this no longer is useful. Linguistically, we've been using it as a tool. Linguistically, forget the supernatural. Now I've become an atheist again. But linguistically, this is a tool for hundreds of thousands of years, but now it's invalid. No longer shall we use this linguistic tool. We have decreed, without believing in God, from on high, that we know. And so she said to me, but as I've come back to it, as I come back to God, it's like, given that everything's a faith claim, as a postmodernist supporter, you should agree with this. As I'll just say this. Okay, it's like post discovering God, having that faith example, which I believe my ancestors supported. It's like life becomes so much easier. It's like a hack. It's just, it blows my mind. It's like,
in relation to that, like I don't know if you know this about me, and I'm curious about your experience. I was raised as a Christian by ministers, and I've had the experience of believing in God and praying and stuff like that. And then gradually became like an agnostic, and then an atheist, and then a militant atheist. And then I stopped being that way, and I'm more like to like, and I'm still just, I'm only an atheist because I don't believe that any gods exist, but I have no problem whatsoever with people choosing to believe in God and people being religious. And I'm interested in learning about people's religious beliefs. But I wonder if, so for me, believing in God doesn't make my life any easier. But I'm also curious about whether you, like before, was there a time before you were an atheist when you were raised as religious? Like, were you raised as religious or atheistic?
Well, I was raised as religious, but it was like when I went to Sunday school when I was young. This is a story I love telling. Like I was at Sunday school, and they kept talking about Jesus, and I was just like thinking to myself, I'm like, why is Jesus stealing all of God's thunder? Does God know that like we're singing songs to Jesus? Because like we keep talking about Jesus, we're not talking about God. Like I was looking up for God. I'm like, this Jesus fuck is stealing all his thunder. So I can't speak to that. But to try to speak to what you're talking about, it's like, how do I say this properly? Okay, so forgive me, this is a bad way to approach it. Okay. I've probably gone through more depression than anyone. Sorry, not anyone. Most people who are going to listen to this, probably more than you. More
I've gone through that a lot too.
And
I've had suicidal thoughts and stuff like that. Not that it's a contest, of course. That's a terrible
no, it's
contest.
not a contest. So you know, and that's why I coached it that way. You know, like, but I mean, I've spent, let's say, at least a decade of the last 15 years with like stress wraps around my chest and like just crazy thoughts. So like, again, it's not a contest, and I'm not trying to compete with anyone. I'm just trying to, like, a lot of people haven't, it's more trying to express the reality of the situation to people who haven't had the experience. It's not about speaking to the severity relative to people who have.
Yeah.
So
well, and it's probably also fair to say that you've had such extreme depression that most people don't experience it too, probably.
Yes, I would say that's true, and I would agree with that. I'm just saying, like, anyone who's actually experienced depression or anxiety, I don't want to compare. I'm not trying to compare my experience to them.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to express the reality. Okay, so you got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, like I've lived through months at a time where every single day I'm racked by like crazy chest binding, self-destructing, like horribleness, you know, like every day, relentless, you know. Anyways, so very bad psychological places to be, say the least. But the thing is okay. So again, I want to say this way. It's like, maybe this is bullshit, maybe self-delusion, but this is the way I see what's happened to me. Okay. Once I started believing in God, okay, it's like all of a sudden now I have this purpose. Peterson would call it meaning. Okay. Once I started having this meaning, this purpose beyond myself, okay, from being in the literal depth of all the things you talked about, but all of a sudden there's something more important than you know? So where I'm at now, it's like, it doesn't matter what happens to me. It doesn't matter. It's actually working, you know, like fuck. I fucked up. I made mistakes that have cost me things. With like, I really like women. I really want to have women have family, and I keep messing that situation up. But like, that keeps happening to me because I have my flaws, which are multifaceted. But like, I'm seeing these mistakes happen, and my resilience to them is just super strong. It's like the first time, like after I believed in God, and then I encountered difficulty, and it just like bounced off me. I was like looking around, and I'm like, am I cheating? Am I hacking? I'm like, what's going on? Like, why is this bouncing off me? And like the most recent time, which is like the last week and a half, it's like I made a huge mistake. Really bad things happened to me. And then I'm right back to being very happy again. Like, there's like no prolonged depression, no prolonged anxiety. It's like, it's just right back to like positive. Let's look what's going forward. And like, that's faith in God. And I'm looking around as a previous hardcore atheist, and I'm like, am I delusional? Am I deluding myself? Is this real? Is this fake? What's happening? Like, I don't know, but this is working. Is that evidence? Again, I don't know. I'm like, but like, the variable I've changed is to now have faith in God, and that the fact that the only thing I'm supposed to serve is the glory of God. And I every day most days, I just like say, hey, I'm a piece of shit. You've given me what you've given me. You know, strike me down, lift me up, whatever. And I just feel better. And then my depression went from like what used to be a 1 to 12 month cycle down to a 3-day cycle. And now I'm back up again. And I'm like, am I full of shit? Am I making this up? But I'm here. So it's like, well, what's real? You know, is it fake to say that the fact that I've gone through depression cycles that were very long to very short, and now they're gone, and I call it belief in God, is that fake? Or is it more real to say, well, evidence says there's no God?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, well, if that works for you, then that's fucking great, man. Like I am of the opinion that if something works for someone, then that's what they should do. And like just for me, for example, I would say that I've had a lot of severe problems with depression for a long time too. And actually, one thing that actually has helped me a lot, I would say relatively recently, like over the past several months, is actually like that sense of community that people get from religion without it being actually explicitly religion, like getting more involved with the mixed mental arts community and participating in those chats and getting to know a lot of really interesting people. Like that's actually how I came across you too, and getting to know a lot of interesting people and having people appreciate some of the creative stuff that I do and what I'm trying to accomplish helps improve my self-esteem, because I understand that, oh, people actually appreciate me, and maybe I actually am a worthwhile person and I'm contributing to the world in a positive way, which I have a lot of trouble accepting, especially when I don't have that sense of community.
Well, that's you're talking about two things. First off, as a man, most men I use identity to self-validate. So they create constructs of identity, and then that's what they validate themselves based on. That's why breakups usually cause depression, because you identify as, I'm the man who has this woman, and if you do that, which I think is the best thing you can do, like fuck MGTOW, I understand it. I have most love and sympathy for those people, but like I would rather die than give up on women. I would prefer to die trying after women, which is what I will literally do. But the thing is like men, you can say humans, but I understand men better than I understand women, so I'm just going to be sexist and talk about men, which I understand better. So men identify with identity. So identity creates a lot of your validation. So be careful with your identity. So like if you can identify as a creative type, speak to you. If you can identify with your role as a person who creates creative content, if you have that identity solid, then whatever happens with women is going to be a lot less consequential, even the rest of your life. As long as a man, you're programmed, evolutionarily speaking, to need to have an identity that is going to be sexually selective for your advantage. If you don't have that, you're in trouble. Like because when women look at you and they say, "Who are you?" If your answer is, "I don't know," you're fucked. Okay? If your answer is, "I'm a creative type who does blah blah blah," you're going somewhere. Okay? But you need, as a man, if you don't have an identity, you're in deep trouble.
That all makes sense.
Yes, it's very, very evolutionary true. And then beyond a man having identity, shit, what was I gonna say? When you pick your tasks, shit, what was I gonna say? Man has to have identity. That's definitely true. What else other thing?
It's sexually beneficial with the opposite sex too. That's one thing you were saying, right?
Saying that. As a man going forward, I'm not going to be able to recover. Next time I'm going to talk to you more sober than I am today. But But like, there's this really interesting modern problem with how to be a human or how to be a man. A very modern problem in the sense that okay, one of my favorite stories is I found this book. It was like medieval type of people across like within a 200-year spectrum, like how they all operated. So you had the medieval housewife, the medieval peasant, the medieval soldier, the medieval da 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 da, and they described how they all lived, right? And a key principle, what I believe in, is evolution, and I believe in like historical reality and the superficiality of modern ideas. But anyways, so they were talking about medieval people, and then so like if you're a medieval person in France, okay, and this existed for many people for hundreds of years, like most of history. What do? Okay, you wake up. It's like you have an obligation to your lord. Okay, so you got to go farm his field, and then your son, if you're lucky to have one, farms your field. But most of what you do is feudalistically based. Okay, it's not this horrible capitalist society. It's a feudalist society.
You have a specific role within the culture, is what you're saying, right?
But it's worse than that. It's like there's no other role.
Right.
There's no other role. Okay,
Yeah.
so all you do is you go in like you can't. Okay, in France for like Germany, you can't leave your land. You're stuck. This is the only option you have is to be the peasant. Byzantine Empire, which I hate that term, it's Eastern Roman Empire, it's Roman Empire. Like all you can do is live where you live. There's no choice.
Yeah.
There's no choice. Okay. This is the most of human history. Is no choice. Okay?
This actually reminds me about this sociologist who basically from a postmodern perspective analyzes culture and society. This guy named Zygmunt Bauman, who I read and then talked about with Tim Keefe the last time he was on my podcast, and he actually what you were saying reminds me of something that Jordan Peterson says that I actually was surprised that people who write about postmodernism were saying before that. And it's interesting because the Zygmunt Bauman was criticizing an aspect of what he calls the postmodern era, which is the era that we're in right now, or actually he calls it liquid modernity. We're in a transitionary period between the modern era and the postmodern era. And one aspect of this is that we have lost our authoritarian or religious structures and our really set foundational places in the culture, and that leads to us having a lot of trouble finding our identity and finding a sense of community. So sometimes we find it in other places like politics and stuff like that.
I couldn't agree to more, and like this starts to get me close to tears. Like if you the problem with 20 modern people is like you don't know your history. Like you don't understand where you came from. Like you don't understand what your ancestors went through. And like one part of that is like the fact that they were all slaves. And then I can tell you stories about like the one day a week that the apex story I was trying to tell went to like party outside the church, which is the only common ground, and the priest was yelling at them and they ignored him because they were all drunk because it was Saturday night. That was the story from that book. And like how ridiculously human it was. They were like slaves, and they followed the priest obviously, but like Friday or Saturday night, whatever it was, they're like, fuck this guy, like we're all gonna dance and go crazy in the only fucking common space we have, which is like the ground next to the church, because that's all we have, right? But what gets me really emotional is like why did people put up with that? Like why would you, like have you heard this before? French serfs, farmers, were so poor that in the winter, what they would do, this is a fact, okay? They would huddle together and next to each other like this and not move all day to stay warm without burning calories. Because if they burn too many calories, they would starve to death or freeze to death.
No, I haven't heard that. Wow.
Can you imagine spending months literally trying not to move and conserving heat, lying next to your brethren for months on end, for generations on end, so you don't starve or freeze to death? Okay, like think like that. This is the problem I have with atheists or progressives or feminists, whatever. It's like think this shit through. Okay, lying next to someone not to starve to death. Okay, like really think this shit through. Think through what history actually was. Okay, are you a revolutionist? Think about how we actually got to where we are. Like really think that shit through. Okay, it's it was so horrible, so horrible. Like I mean, you listen to Hardcore History at all?
Who? Sorry.
Hardcore History podcast.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
You listen to his World War I thing?
Yeah, yeah. Blueprint for Armageddon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love Dan Carlin and I love Hardcore History and I love that series too.
Okay. Those fucking children, like think about what they went through. Would you sign up for World War I?
No.
Okay. I wanted to join the Canadian Army in 2006. I don't think I would anymore. Okay. Now, you tell me, okay, as a postmodernist, tell me it's the same to join it as not to join it. Okay. This is an example of objective morality. No, I don't want to go through Jennifer Harlan's history of First World War I. No. This is like a subjective impression that I can like fucking pontificate about in the room.
But the point that people who write about postmodernism would make here, I think, is that it doesn't matter. You make decisions whether there is an objective decision or an objective reality or an objective morality or not.
So,
it doesn't matter.
I'll ask you. So you're indifferent to whether I send you to World War I or not. Does it matter to you?
Yes, it matters, but I don't know. Like neither of us are objectively right about that.
Which is it? So this perspective of postmodernism, you just said, would say it doesn't matter. Then I ask you, and you say, "Yeah, of course it fucking matters."
No. It's that it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong about that. It doesn't mean that you can't make decisions, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't make decisions.
But what do you mean by doesn't matter? You would never want to be in that situation.
No. I'm saying whether we're right or wrong doesn't matter. I'm not saying being in that situation. The difference between being in that situation and not being in that situation doesn't matter. I'm saying that me liking it or not liking it doesn't matter.
And what does that mean, though? In what sense does it not matter?
I'm saying it does. Whether I am objectively right or wrong about making that decision doesn't matter. If I don't want to go to war to be a soldier in World War I, then I shouldn't do it. If I do want to do it, then I should do it, regardless of how people make those decisions and whether they're right or wrong about that decision.
What? You're not answering my question. You have not said, hey, you're either going to go to the trenches in World War I or not. In what sense does that not matter?
I'm not saying that doesn't matter. I'm saying to each individual person, of course it matters. Of course it matters. No one that I know of would say that doesn't matter.
You're not saying anything. This is my thing. Okay, if you You can't use postmodernism to say, okay, this is reality. Okay, reality. This is actual reality. This is real life. This is actually what actually happens in the real world. This is the only thing that actually matters. You are a human being. This is
that's exactly what I'm saying. What happens in the real world?
In reality, you're a human being. Okay. So in reality, you're going to World War I or you're not. Okay. What you just said was postmodernism has nothing to say that's relevant in that situation. Because I asked you, I'm like, look, I'm either gonna go through the worst thing ever or I'm not. And I asked you.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So postmodernism has nothing relevant to say about that. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, so can we call it irrelevant then?
Yeah, because we're like postmodernists, as far as I know anyway, I could be wrong, but like all the postmodernists that I've read have not said it's right or wrong.
We're done. If we can go postmodernism irrelevant, let's call it irrelevant. Let's never talk about it again.
It's irrelevant for making day-to-day decisions because, like I was saying at the beginning, it's an analytical thing. It's not a prescriptive thing. It's not like other philosophies in which it tells you this is right or wrong, this is what you should do and what you shouldn't do. It's a way of analyzing things.
Does the way you analyze things affect your day-to-day decisions?
It depends on what you're analyzing. Like if you're analyzing how the concept of mental health has changed throughout history, it doesn't necessarily have an impact on your daily life. Talking about
There's no separation. There's no separation between anything. What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
Okay. Here. We've been talking for a long time. I love you very much. I'm so happy you spent the time to talk to me.
Me too, man.
We'll have to pick it up somewhere. The state of guy doesn't. You're a piece of shit. Oh God.
Yeah, I'm the best.
The best?
I'm the best.
Hey.
Let the real interview begin.
All right. Anyways, we'll pick it up. But the thought I want to leave you with is like, every fucking idea you have influences the way you act. This idea that you can put postmodernism in a basket of non-influencing morality is like ridiculous. Like that's how reality works. Everything's connected.
It's not saying that it has no impact. It's saying that it doesn't make moral claims. Like explicitly moral claims.
Impact is moral. There's no such thing as a non-moral impact.
But that's what you're saying though. That's your faith claim.
Give me an example of a non-moral impact of anything.
What's an impact?
I'm being generous. I'm being generous to you. You just said there's a possible example. You just said that you said in your context it's a non-moral impact. So I'm being generous to you. I'm saying give me any impact at all in all of human history.
I'm walking down the street, my shoe comes untied, so I bend down to tie my shoe.
It's moral.
How is that moral? How is that moral?
Because you're saying it's a good idea to walk. You're saying it's a good idea to maintain your shoe. You're saying it's a good idea to not walk barefoot. You're saying human beings should be such a creature that walks with shoes that they don't lose, that they maintain to protect their feet.
But you're adding all of that. Like people don't necessarily even think about that.
But do you believe in Jonathan Haidt or not?
In what?
Because you believe in Jonathan Haidt or not? Because it's not.
I agree with a lot of what he says.
The elephant says you're walking not because you're going from Harvey's to your home. Why are you walking? You're walking because you're a biological creature that has a purpose. Okay, so you're walking. No, I'm dead serious. Okay, you're not walking because you're walking. You're walking because You want to get home to survive, to sleep. Okay.
I think you're a closet postmodernist. You're sounding like a postmodernist.
Idea. But back to my question: what's an impact? Because you're talking about morality and impact.
Yeah.
What's an impact?
That's my thing. That's my thing. You guys would agree. This guy's devil's advocate number one.
No, I just fucking use logic.
No, you don't. You don't. You just fucking argue and argue and argue and argue.
I agree. I argue.
That's what we've been doing this whole time.
I know you like to argue even if you're wrong.
No, when you're wrong, motherfucker. I'm a deep believer in Christ. I want to bring about the kingdom of heaven on earth.
Forgive me and forgive us.
I forgive you everything. I forgive you everything.
Well, then why do you have to proselytize all the time?
Because Peter said so.
Who's wrong though?
The people that are the most respected are the most.
Don't you find it annoying when people proselytize about atheism? Like to me, they're not like they're both equally annoying.
No. Yes, that's devil. That's the devil. That's of the devil. No, but it is. Here's the thing. Arrogance. Atheism's out because the thing is what you're trying to. Okay,
you're wasting your breath, man. You're just wasting your breath.
Atheism is pronouncing a conclusion. Okay.
So is the opposite.
No, I don't know what God wants. I don't know the best way to reach it. That's why I'm a Christian.
That's your conclusion.
But if you're
a conclusion. That's a conclusion.
Yeah, you can paradox anything. That's a confines. That's the reason why you have to believe in God, because you can't know what you're talking about. You never know what you're talking about.
So you know what you're talking about because you believe in God?
I can't know what I'm talking about. That's the problem with atheism. You're saying you know what you're talking about.
No, you're not. No, you're not. No, not necessarily. That's what I was saying before.
Then we still have stuff to talk about.
The definition, if you look up the dictionary definition of an atheist, it's someone who doesn't believe that gods exist.
Doesn't believe in a definition.
They don't believe that gods exist.
They don't believe in a definition.
Yeah.
So God to me is undefinable.
Okay, so that seems why have one position one way or the other on something that's undefinable?
How can you not believe in something undefinable?
Because your definition of God is different from other definitions of God. Because, like you said, if your opinion is that God is undefinable, then how am I going to agree or disagree with something that's undefinable?
Let's go with that. So you can't be an atheist then. You can't.
Well, that's because it's your definition of God. With other people have different definitions of God.
Okay, you're gonna I love you very much. I understand your role in reality is to be a skeptic. I would assume you're going to continue to be a skeptic, and I will say like candidly, okay, I've always been an assertive. Okay, I would argue my genetic profile has predisposed me to be an assertive person. I don't think I've had a choice in it. So I don't think I'm choosing to be assertive. I've always been that way. Okay. So it's not like that's my elephant. Okay. Now, that being said, you also want to be a person who's believes in growth or evolution or whatever evidence, these trivial things that atheists take for granted and ignore.
Let me just interject and say that if we're talking about your definition of God, that is something that's undefinable, then in this context, in this conversation, if we're going with that definition, then I'm not an atheist in terms of that definition.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. According, in terms of your definition, I can't not believe in something that you haven't defined. That doesn't make sense.
That's why I'm saying atheist is bullshit, because
But atheism is bullshit if you're going along with your definition. That's not even the common
Here's
definition
what the
of
atheist
God.
is saying. The atheist is saying is, I don't believe in a strong man that no one's ever believed in.
That's not what an atheist position is. An atheist position is not believing in most people. Like, to me, for example, most people's definition of God. When most people tell me their definition of God, it is different from your definition, and I don't agree with anyone when they tell me what their definition is. If you say that you can't define it, then that's different. It's hard to disagree with something that you haven't defined.
Sorry.
It's not a straw man.
No, it's not. Sorry. I need to apologize very strongly.
That's okay. That's okay.
No, it's not like, not to you, but just to reality in general. It's like, what you think you're an atheist towards is a very valid thing, and it makes super sense to not believe in that. And there's so many people who claim to be non-atheists who talk about the exact thing you don't believe in all the time, and that's like completely legitimate. And I don't believe in that. I find that ridiculous. Like I said earlier, I've been a hardcore atheist. I find what they define God to be as preposterous, and I oppose to the end of the earth. And I should probably open my statements with acknowledging that, because I would never believe, like, I think of, I call them George Bush Christians. It's like preposterous, you know? Like,
yeah, I've known a lot of people. I've known a lot of people like that.
See, I haven't met many of them. Like, I've met so few religious people. I've been in such a bubble, you know. So, like, to you or to anyone, like, I've met so many dogmatic progressives. It's been my entire life. I've never met dogmatic Christians.
Oh, I've met a lot.
Yeah, I haven't experienced that, you know, and it would change me a lot. Like, I'm a very open, impressionable person, you know.
One of my former bosses used to be the epitome of the stereotype of a fundamentalist Christian. Like, he believed every fucking stereotype of a fundamentalist Christian that you could think of. Like, he was misogynistic, he was homophobic, he was racist, he didn't believe in evolution, he thought the earth was 7,000 years old, and so on and so forth. And he used Christian justifications for these.
See, that's the whole thing. It's like the same argument I've been having with you about God. I could have the exact same argument with probably the majority of people to the church I go to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like this is a fucked up reality.
Yeah.
This is messed up. And like, as somebody who really, really wants to be a Christian, it's like, these are dark times. Dark times. And I'm going to try to wrap this up to help my friends there. And let's hope we talk again. And we'll follow up with Ed. And I respect you a lot. And like, anyways, I want to do everything I can to encourage this conversation. But the point I'm trying to make is that people do not understand their ancestors at all. Like, there's like druids and shamans, like, they were the keepers of the message of the truth. That's what the priesthood class used to do. And like, people have forgotten that, like, there's like an economic class, a military class, a political class, a priesthood class. People have forgotten that, like, for all of our history, and this is what I mean, people don't understand evolution. They claim that this is, Sam Harris is a piece of shit. Sam Harris has no understanding of evolution, no understanding of social history, no understanding of actual history. He's the most
or the context in which different religions are expressed with different people throughout history too.
Yes. Just ignorant. It's like, the thing is, it's like, you don't learn yourself. You learn you learn about biology from what has your tribe done to eat. Okay. You learn about morality. What has your priestly class done to do morality? Because there's so many complications, you don't learn it yourself. Everything you do is inherited. That's everything you do. Okay. So morality, economics, all these things you inherit. Okay. You're lucky if you can be a little bit better than what you inherit. A little bit better. But you're not. Okay. It's such a complicated problem. It's all inheritance. People forget this all the time. They're so arrogant about the reality.
Yeah.
So anyway, but especially with the priestly class, they've forgotten that there used to be people who held wisdom and who transmitted wisdom. Okay, native cultures. They talk about their yeah. Come on, tell me their story. You're not gonna tell me, whatever. But like I talked to Keith, my native friend there, and like they actually have stories that actually transmit lessons that they actually take seriously.
Yep.
That, like, hey, modern people are like, oh, I'm so smart. I can just like read scientific stuff. I don't have to know any, like, I reinvent the wheel. You know, it was circle, but now it's like circle. So like it's new, right? It's circle, but now it's circle. I'm so smart. And but like for everything, for fucking everything, it's like evolution. It's like you're. I'll tell you one last thing I'll say. Okay, do you know how my brain does this? You know how that works? My brain does. The way that like our brains work is there's a part of our brain that says retract claws, which is all the fingers.
Mm-hmm.
There's a modern part of our brain that says don't retract that finger. Okay, everything is built on something else. Everything is built on something else. So like modern people, and this is why I think Sam Harris is a piece of shit, is like you can't escape your history. Okay. If you want to propose any idea,
You can escape history if you like.
You have to build upon what was. That's how reality is worked. That's how reality always will work. So anything that isn't connected to a past thing never continues, never has. There's no evidence that it ever will. So it's like if you believe in evidence and science and evolution, then if you look at reality, it's like things that people. Anyways, I'm sorry, I get emotional.
I get your point. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, there's no such thing as something new or something original. I agree. Yeah. But yeah, if you want that to be your closing note there, I would saying, yeah, well, thanks so much for talking to me, especially for such a long time. This was a really interesting and great conversation, and like you were saying, I hope we can do it again. And yeah, we're gonna talk to Ed there too. And I'll just say all the things I like to say at the end of my videos, and then if you want, you can give any plugs that you have or anything, or any closing thoughts or anything. So yeah, thanks everyone so much for watching another episode of the Mindgasms podcast. I know this is like a debate and conversation rather that went into a lot of different places, and yeah, it was a really fun conversation. And thanks everyone so much for watching, and thanks to everyone who likes this video and subscribes to my channel, or who contributes to me on Patreon. And thank you so fucking much to anyone else who does any of that too, likes this video, shares it, subscribes to my channel, and especially if someone contributes to me on Patreon, I really fucking appreciate it, and it helps me out a lot. And like I always say, you'll like this, Shane, because it's a religious sounding claim. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And also, like, most importantly, like I always say, the funk cures all. All right, keep having mindgasms, everyone. And you had any plugs or closing thoughts there, Shane?
Everything is religious. What are you silly, silly small man? God, love God, love your neighbor as all of human wisdom can be summed up in shit. What's the I can't do the
I
Bible.
think
Anyways,
something that we can agree on is
love the
love.
neighbor as thyself. Love the neighbor as thyself.
Okay, yes, that's a
Just
good
do
thing
that.
that
Do
we
that
can agree on.
well, and you'll be set.
That's something that we can agree on. Power of love, man. All right. All right.
You're one of the more Christian people I've ever met.
You're one of the most postmodern people I've ever met.
I love it. I love it. Okay.
All right. All right. Yeah. Thanks so much for talking, man. And thanks so much for watching, everyone. And
Thank you. That'd be good.
all right. Adios until next time, everyone.